In this video, we'll be breaking down 2 hours of disturbing Futurama facts. Let's get started. First up, we got the 1,000-year cryogenic sleep of Philip J. Fry. Fry was a pizza delivery boy living in New York City who got frozen for exactly 1,000 years on the last night of 1,999. This 25-year-old guy with red hair and a red jacket worked at Panucci's Pizza, and his life was pretty terrible right up until the moment he accidentally fell into a cryogenic freezer. The freezing happened at the stroke of midnight on December 31st, 1999, when the world was celebrating the new millennium. Fry woke up on December 31st, 2999, exactly 1,000 years later, in a completely different world that looked nothing like the one he left behind. The night started badly for Fry and just kept getting worse. He was at work playing a video game called Monkey Fracas Jr. at the pizza place when his boss, Mr. Panucci, told him he had a delivery to make. This was already annoying because it was New Year's Eve, and Fry wanted to be somewhere celebrating instead of working. But things got much worse when he was riding his bike through the city to make the delivery. He saw his girlfriend, Michelle Jenkins, sitting in a taxi cab with another man named Charles Constantine. Michelle looked out the window and told Fry they were breaking up. She said she had put all his stuff out on the sidewalk, and then the cab drove away. Fry was devastated because he had been dating Michelle for a while, and they even lived together. Fry kept riding his bike toward the delivery address, saying over and over to himself how much he hated his life. When he got to the building where he needed to make the delivery, someone stole his bike right outside. A guy broke the chain, said Happy New Year, and rode off with it. Fry walked into the building carrying the pizza and a 6-pack of lowbrow beer. The building was tall, and the delivery was all the way up on the 64th floor. The place was called Applied Cryogenics, which was a company that froze people in special tubes for long periods of time. When Fry got to the door, he saw a sign that said the company had not had any power failures since 1997, which should have been a sign that their freezing technology was reliable. Fry knocked on the door, but nobody answered. The place seemed totally empty because it was New Year's Eve and everyone had gone home for the holiday. He opened the door and walked into a dark room filled with tall cryogenic freezing pods that were about 6 feet high. These pods were lined up against the walls, and some of them had frozen people inside. Fry wiped some condensation off one of the windows and saw a frozen person's face staring back at him through the glass. He looked at the delivery note to see who ordered the pizza. The name on the order was I.C. Weiner, which when said out loud sounds like Icy Wiener. Fry immediately realized this was a prank call. Someone had called in a fake pizza order just to mess with him on New Year's Eve. Fry was incredibly frustrated and angry. He sat down in a chair at a desk in the middle of the room, put his feet up, and opened one of the beers from the 6-pack he had brought. He was completely alone in this dark freezing facility, and it seemed like the perfect ending to the worst day of his life. His girlfriend had dumped him, someone stole his bike, and now he had been sent on a prank delivery that meant he would not get paid. Fry leaned back in the chair and raised his beer can. He said out loud, "Here's to another lousy millennium," taking a drink as the entire world outside was counting down to midnight. Through the window, people in Times Square and all around the planet were celebrating. In Paris, at the Eiffel Tower, on the Mir space station, at the pyramids in Egypt, and at the Parthenon in Greece, everyone was counting down the final seconds of 1,999. When the countdown reached 0 and the new millennium began, Fry pulled out a party horn and blew it half-heartedly to mark the moment. But as soon as he blew the horn, something went wrong. The chair he was sitting in started tipping backward. Fry waved his arms around trying to keep his balance, but he could not stop himself from falling. The chair tipped all the way back and Fry fell off it, rolling backward across the floor. He rolled right into one of the open cryogenic freezing tubes. The door of the cryogenic tube slammed shut automatically as soon as Fry fell inside. The control panel on the front of the machine lit up, and the timer automatically set itself to 1,000 years. Fry looked out through the small window in the door with a horrified expression on his face. He was trapped inside and could not get out. Within seconds, the freezing process began. A dribble of beer that had been dripping from his can suddenly froze solid in midair. Then Fry himself froze completely, his face stuck in a shocked and scared expression. The machine was designed to keep people frozen safely for however long the timer was set, and in Fry's case, that was exactly 1,000 years. Time started passing incredibly fast outside the freezing tube. Days and nights went by in rapid succession, like watching a time-lapse video. The sun and moon raced across the sky over and over again. Through the window of the cryogenic tube, Fry's frozen face remained completely still, while centuries flew by outside. The very next day, after New Year's, sanitation workers came and swept up all the confetti and garbage from the celebration. Then the days kept speeding by faster and faster. Buildings around the city started changing as time marched forward. Years turned into decades, and decades turned into centuries. About 200 years into Fry's freezing, alien spaceships appeared in the sky. These flying saucers crossed over New York City from left to right and completely destroyed all the buildings with laser weapons. The entire city was reduced to rubble and ruins. After the destruction, nature started taking over. A jungle grew up through the remains of the destroyed city, with trees and plants covering everything that had once been streets and buildings. But then, human civilization rebuilt itself. The city was reconstructed, but this time the new buildings looked like medieval castles instead of modern skyscrapers. A few hundred years later, the aliens came back again. This time their spaceships crossed the city from right to left, destroying everything once more with their advanced weapons. The medieval city was wiped out, just like the modern one had been. But once again, humanity rebuilt. Over the remaining centuries, buildings rose and fell in blurry flashes. The construction happened so fast from Fry's perspective that individual buildings were impossible to make out. The small pyramid-shaped building that housed applied cryogenics somehow survived all these destructions and rebuilding periods. It remained standing throughout the entire 1,000 years, protected and preserved as the world changed around it. Eventually, the future version of New York City was built on top of the ruins of the old city. This new metropolis was called New New York, and it was constructed right on top of what became known as Old New York. The old city was now underground, buried beneath the new one. Massive, futuristic buildings rose into the sky. Flying cars and spaceships zoomed through the air in organized traffic patterns. Advanced technology was everywhere. The world had become a science fiction fantasy made real, with robots walking around, aliens living among humans, and technology that would have seemed like magic to people from 1999. On December 31st, 2999, exactly 1,000 years after Fry fell into the tube, the timer on his cryogenic freezing pod finally reached 0 and made a dinging sound. The door popped open automatically, and Fry stumbled out, completely disoriented and confused. The freezing process had worked perfectly, and he had not aged a single day. He was still 25 years old, wearing the same red jacket and white shirt he had on when he fell in. He still had the pizza delivery and the remaining beers with him. To Fry, it felt like no time had passed at all, even though a full millennium had gone by in the outside world. Fry walked over to the window and looked out at the city. What he saw was absolutely shocking. Instead of the New York he remembered, he saw a completely transformed world. The skyline was filled with impossibly tall buildings that reached far higher than anything from his time. Flying vehicles zoomed past the window in organized lanes in the sky. There were spaceships taking off and landing. He saw a massive billboard that read, "Happy New Year, 3000, being displayed on a blimp floating above the city. Fry realized with sudden clarity that he was not in 1999 anymore. He was in the future, exactly 1,000 years later. His first reaction was shock and panic. He pressed his face against the window and said out loud that he would never see his parents, his co-workers, or his girlfriend ever again. Everyone he had ever known was dead. His entire world was gone. But then something interesting happened. After thinking about it for just a few seconds, Fry's expression completely changed. A huge smile spread across his face, and he shouted, "Yahoo!" with genuine excitement and happiness. He realized that his old life had been terrible. He was broke, he had a job he hated, and his girlfriend had just dumped him anyway. The future might actually be better than the past. At that moment, the door to the freezing room opened, and 2 lab technicians walked in. Their shadows appeared first, then one of them turned on the lights. The more dramatic one, a blonde man named Terry who wore thick glasses, said in a theatrical voice, "Welcome to the world of tomorrow." His co-worker Lou, who had black hair and was Asian, asked Terry why he always had to say it that way. Terry explained that he believed in something called showmanship. The 2 technicians had come to work that morning and found Fry's tube had opened during the night. They were there to process him and help him adjust to life in the year 3000. The technicians escorted Fry down a corridor to meet with the Fate Assignment Officer. This was a woman named Turanga Leela, who had purple hair tied up in a ponytail and wore a black uniform. The most striking thing about her was that she only had one eye, located in the center of her face where a normal person would have a nose. Fry tried not to stare at her eye, though he found it both unusual and weirdly attractive. Leela told Fry that it was December 31st, 2999, confirming what he had seen on the blimp. She seemed concerned that waking up 1,000 years in the future would be extremely upsetting for him, but Fry surprised her by saying he was actually glad this had happened. He explained that he had nothing to live for in his old life. He was broke, had a humiliating job as a pizza delivery boy, and he was pretty sure his girlfriend had been cheating on him anyway. Leela was touched by his honesty and told him that at least in the future, he would be treated with dignity. Then, she immediately told him to strip naked and get on something called the probulator for his medical examination. Fry had to lie on a metal table while medical equipment probed him. Leela wore special goggles to operate the machine. After the examination was complete, Leela tore off a printout from the probulator and studied it carefully. She told Fry something very interesting had shown up in his DNA test. According to the results, Fry had exactly one living relative in the year 3000. This relative was his great-great-great-great-great-great-great-nephew, a very old scientist named Professor Hubert J. Farnsworth. Leela showed Fry a photo of the professor, who was a bald, elderly man with thick glasses. Fry made a face when he saw the picture, but he was still excited to have living family in this strange new time. Fry started making promises to himself about his second chance at life. He was determined not to mess things up this time. He was going to make the most of his new opportunity in the future. But then, Leela told him something that destroyed his good mood instantly. She revealed his permanent career assignment had been determined by the probulator based on his skills and abilities. His job in the future would be exactly what it had been in the past. He was assigned to be a delivery boy. Fry begged Leela for any other job. He could not believe that after traveling 1,000 years into the future, he was being forced back into the exact same career he had hated so much. Leela explained that this was how society worked in the future. Everyone had to do the job they were assigned, whether they liked it or not. Even she had to work at a job. She tried to implant a career chip into Fry's hand that would mark him as a delivery boy permanently, but Fry refused and ran away. Leela chased after him through the applied cryogenics building. During the chase, Fry managed to push Leela backward, and she fell into one of the cryogenic tubes. The door slammed shut, and the timer automatically set itself for 1,000 years, just like what had happened to Fry. Leela looked out through the window in panic, yelling at Fry to let her out. She said she would count to 5 and he better open the door. But Fry walked away, planning to leave her frozen there, just like he had been. However, after thinking about it for a moment, his conscience got the better of him. He walked back to the tube and changed the timer from 1,000 years to just 5 minutes. He said, "You owe me one," to Leela through the glass, then hurried out of the building to explore New York City. Outside on the street, Fry was amazed by everything he saw. There were flying cars everywhere, creating traffic jams in the sky. People flew through green tubes overhead to get around the city quickly. Some people walked past him nearly naked, except for black bars covering their private parts. There were advertisements for bizarre products like Bachelor Chow, which was apparently food for single men. Robot citizens walked alongside humans and aliens on the sidewalks. Everything was bright, colorful, loud, and completely overwhelming. Fry wandered through this strange new world, still carrying his beer can, trying to take it all in. Years later, it would be revealed that Fry's fall into the cryogenic tube was not actually an accident at all. There was a small alien creature named Nibbler hiding under the desk that night in 1999. Nibbler belonged to an ancient alien race called the Niblonians, and they had sent him back in time specifically to make Fry fall into the freezing tube. When Fry leaned back in his chair and blew the party horn, Nibbler blew on the chair from underneath, giving it just enough push to make Fry fall. The Niblonians needed Fry in the future because he had a special brain that could save the universe from evil creatures called the Brain Spawn. The shadow that appeared under the desk when Fry fell was Nibbler's shadow, though nobody noticed it at the time. This information would not become clear until much later in Fry's adventures. In an episode called The Why of Fry, which aired in the 4th season of the show, Nibbler revealed the whole truth. He explained that because Fry had done something strange with time travel, he had become his own grandfather, which gave him a unique brain structure. His brain lacked something called the delta brainwave that all normal humans have. This made him immune to the mind-reading and mind-controlling powers of the Brain Spawn, evil floating brains that wanted to destroy all knowledge in the universe. The Niblonians had predicted that only Fry could stop the Brain Spawn, but since Fry's natural lifespan would not reach the year 3000, they arranged for him to be frozen and preserved until he was needed. The show even revealed that when the Brainspawn trapped Fry in their information sphere called the Infosphere, they sent him back in time to December 31st, 1999. Fry confronted Nibbler about making him fall into the tube. Nibbler told Fry that if he stopped himself from being frozen, his friend Leela would die and the entire universe would be destroyed. Nibbler convinced Fry that Leela was worth saving. So Fry made the decision himself to blow on his own chair, creating a time loop where he caused himself to fall into the cryogenic tube. This meant Fry was ultimately responsible for his own 1,000-year journey to the future. The accident at Applied Cryogenics completely changed Fry's life forever. Instead of being stuck in a dead-end job in 1999, he became part of amazing adventures in the year 3000 and beyond. He ended up working for his distant nephew, Professor Farnsworth, at a delivery company called Planet Express. He became best friends with a robot named Bender, who drank alcohol and smoked cigars. He fell in love with Leela, the one-eyed woman who had tried to assign him his career on his first day in the future. Together, the three of them traveled across the galaxy, delivering packages and getting into dangerous and ridiculous situations. The 1,000-year cryogenic sleep was the most important moment in Philip J. Fry's entire life. It took him from being a miserable pizza delivery boy who hated his existence to being someone who mattered in a vast universe filled with aliens, robots, and endless possibilities. Even though he ended up with basically the same job he had before, delivering things for a living, the scale and adventure of his new life made all the difference. He went from delivering pizzas to boring addresses in New York, to delivering mysterious packages to distant planets full of strange creatures and dangerous situations. The freezing technology that preserved Fry worked exactly as designed. The cryogenic tube kept him in perfect suspended animation for exactly 1,000 years without a single failure. His body did not age even one day during that entire time. The company's sign had proudly displayed that they had no power failures since 1997, and they maintained that perfect record through Fry's entire freezing period despite alien invasions, civilization collapses, and complete rebuilding of society. The technology kept him safe and unchanged through a millennium of chaos outside. This story of Philip J. Fry's accidental freezing became the foundation for the entire Futurama television series. The pilot episode, called Space Pilot 3000, aired on March 28, 1999, just a few months before the real year 2000 began. The show was created by Matt Groening and David X. Cohen, and it used Fry's journey to the future as a way to explore themes about technology, society, relationships, and what it means to start over with a completely blank slate. The moment when Fry fell into that tube at midnight on New Year's Eve, 1999, set everything else in motion, creating one of the most beloved animated science fiction series ever made. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the mutant underworld of Old New York and its horrifying realities. Beneath the gleaming towers and flying cars of New York lies a hidden world that most surface dwellers would rather forget exists. Deep underground in the ancient sewers of Old New York, there lives an entire population of mutated humans who were forced to make their home in toxic waste and crumbling pipes. These sewer mutants represent one of the darkest aspects of life in the 31st century, where an entire group of people faced legal discrimination and were banned from ever setting foot on the surface world above their heads. The mutants became what they are through generations of exposure to toxic sewage and radioactive waste that flowed through the pipes beneath the city. Over many years, the pollution transformed normal humans into beings with horrible physical deformities and strange mutations. Some mutants have extra arms growing out of their heads, others have multiple eyes or noses. There are mutants whose entire bodies consist of just a single leg with a face on it. Some have tentacles instead of arms, while others have fly-like tongues and insect eyes. The mutations vary wildly from person to person, but they all share one thing in common. They were considered too disgusting and too inferior to be allowed to live among normal humans on the surface. The mutant population lives in what remains of Old New York, the original city that existed before the year 3000. When New York was built, it was constructed directly on top of the ruins of the old city, burying everything underground. The streets and buildings from centuries past became the ceiling and walls of the mutant world. They made their homes in abandoned subway tunnels, old storefronts, and whatever structures survived from the previous civilization. The mutants built an entire underground society, using objects and materials that surface dwellers flushed down their toilets or threw into the sewers. They scavenged everything they needed from the garbage and waste of the people above. Despite living in such terrible conditions, the mutants managed to create something resembling a normal civilization underground. They had their own shops and restaurants that looked similar to corporate chains from the 20th century. They built schools to educate their children. They even had their own library, though according to one mutant, it consisted of nothing but crumpled pornography and books by Ayn Rand. The mutants had doctors, teachers, and other professionals. They practiced their own religion, which involved worshipping an unexploded nuclear bomb, though, as one mutant named Violette explained, nobody was really that observant about it, and it was mainly just a Christmas and Easter thing. The mutant community had its own government, led by a mayor called the Supreme Mutant. His name was Raoul, and he had an extra arm growing out of his head that he could use just like his normal arms. Raoul served as the official spokesman for the mutant people, and was responsible for making important decisions and handing out punishments when mutants broke their laws. He was usually soft-spoken unless something important came up, and when he did speak, he often used an extremely sarcastic tone. Raoul worked closely with other prominent mutants like Dwayne, who had 2 noses and taught at the mutant school, and Violette, a female mutant who seemed to be romantically involved with Raoul. One of the most notable mutants was simply called the leg mutant because his entire body was just a leg with a face on it. This poor individual was often singled out as an example of how miserable and degrading life was for the sewer mutants. When other mutants wanted to complain about how bad they had it, they would point to the leg mutant and say even they had it better than him. The leg mutant would sadly agree that this was true. His existence highlighted just how cruel the mutations could be and how desperate the living conditions were underground. The mutants spent their days maintaining the vast network of pipes and sewage systems that kept the surface city functioning properly. They worked on something called the West Side Pipeway, which was a massive pipeline system that controlled all the waste from above ground. If the mutants working on this pipeway slacked off for even a single second, the entire thing could explode and send workers flying downstream in a torrent of sewage. The work was dangerous, disgusting, and absolutely essential for keeping New York running. Yet the surface dwellers showed no gratitude or respect for the people doing this vital labor. The most dangerous location in the mutant world was Lake Mutagenic, a large pool of incredibly toxic sewage that glowed with radioactive waste. This lake had the power to permanently mutate the DNA of anyone who fell into it or even touched the water. The true horror of Lake Mutagenic would be demonstrated years later when Fry jumped into the toxic water in a misguided attempt to understand what it meant to be a mutant. When he emerged from the lake, Fry had been transformed into the most hideous mutant anyone had ever seen. He had 3 eyes, horns growing from his head, tentacles sprouting from his body, and flesh that seemed to melt and drip off his bones. The mutation was so grotesque that even Leela could barely stand to touch him. This showed just how dangerous the toxic water really was, and why the mutants lived in constant fear of accidentally falling into it. The surface world had strict laws about mutants that amounted to complete segregation and discrimination. Mutants were absolutely forbidden from living on the surface under any circumstances. If a mutant was caught above ground, police officers would immediately arrest them and throw them back down into the sewers through the nearest manhole. This was called permanent deportation. The punishment for surface dwellers who harbored mutants or helped them hide on the surface was being sentenced to time in the sewers themselves. Even trying to help a mutant could land a normal person in serious legal trouble. The people on the surface considered mutants to be inferior genetic scum who were filthy and dangerous. Rich surface dwellers pretended to care about the mutants through charity organizations, but their real motives were much darker. A wealthy woman named Mrs. Astor ran something called the United Mutant Scholarship Fund, which funded a university called Brown University, where mutants could learn skills. The university was marketed as a charitable institution that helped mutants get educated and improve their lives. However, Mrs. Astor privately admitted the real purpose was just to keep the mutants busy. She explained that there were thousands of mutants breeding like rats down in the sewers, and if they were not kept occupied with school and work, they would start demanding equal rights. Brown University was basically a tax-deductible sewer cleaning service disguised as education. The whole system was designed to exploit mutant labor while preventing them from organizing or fighting for better treatment. A propaganda film shown at Mrs. Astor's fundraiser described the mutants in deeply offensive terms. The narrator called them pitiable creatures who toiled far beneath the rumble of limousines and poodle feet. The film showed mutants working on pipes and toilets while the narrator explained that generations of exposure to toxic sewage had mutated them into horrific monsters. Despite calling them industrious people, the narrator could barely hide his disgust. The film referred to mutants as proud toileteers who learned their menial skills at Brown University, the nation's premier institution of lower learning. The whole presentation made it clear that surface society viewed mutants as subhuman workers who existed only to maintain sewage systems. The most shocking revelation about the mutant underworld involved Turanga Leela, the one-eyed woman who worked as a delivery captain for Planet Express. For most of her life, Leela believed she was an alien who had been abandoned on Earth as a baby. She grew up in an orphanage called the Cookieville Minimum Security Orphanarium, where she was told her parents left her with a note written in an alien language. Leela spent years wondering about her origins and trying to find out what alien world she came from. The truth turned out to be much closer to home than she ever imagined. Leela was actually a mutant who had been born in the sewers to two mutant parents named Turanga Morris and Turanga Munda. Morris had a single eye, like his daughter, along with other mutations. Munda had one eye as well, but she also had tentacles instead of arms and other deformities. When Leela was born, her parents were shocked to discover that she was the least mutated mutant ever born. Aside from having only one eye instead of two, Leela looked completely normal and could easily pass for either a regular human or an alien. Her parents realized their daughter had an opportunity that no other mutant child would ever have. If they kept her in the sewers, she would be trapped underground forever like them, forced to work in sewage and live as an outcast. But if they gave her up, she might be able to live on the surface and have a real life. Morris and Munda made the incredibly difficult decision to abandon their baby at the orphanarium so she could grow up believing she was an alien rather than a mutant. Munda wrote a note in Alienese, an alien language, so the orphanarium staff would assume Leela came from another planet. The note actually said, "Your parents love you very much," but nobody on the surface could translate it, so they just assumed it was an alien message. Leela's parents also left her with a bracelet, and her mother kept an identical bracelet for herself as the only connection between them. The parents hoped that by pretending Leela was an alien, she would be allowed to live on the surface and escape the horrible fate of being a sewer mutant. Throughout Leela's entire childhood and adult life, her parents secretly watched over her from the sewers. They followed her everywhere she went, hiding in shadows and peeking through sewer grates. Whenever Leela accomplished something or reached a milestone, her parents were there, watching. When she was a baby, they saved her from falling. When she was a child, they secretly left cookies for her. When she was a teenager, they left her birthday presents. When she was an adult, living in her apartment, they would sneak in while she slept and cover her with a blanket. They collected every newspaper article written about her and kept photos of every major event in her life. The mutant parents loved their daughter desperately, but could never reveal themselves because they knew it would ruin her life. The truth about Leela's heritage was eventually discovered in the most unfortunate way. Bender started a waste disposal business and began dumping massive amounts of garbage and toxic waste into the sewers. This made the mutants incredibly angry because it was destroying what little quality of life they had. The mutants came up to the surface in a rare appearance, grabbed Bender along with Fry and Leela, and dragged them down into the sewers. The mutants tied the three of them up and suspended them over Lake Mutagenic, planning to dunk them in the toxic water as punishment. Two mysterious hooded mutants suddenly appeared and saved the trio by swinging the crane and dropping them on the far side of the lake. The hooded figures kept helping Leela escape from the other mutants, which made her suspicious about their identities. When Leela finally caught up with them, she found a house filled with photos and newspaper clippings documenting her entire life. She also noticed that one of the hooded mutants wore a bracelet identical to the one she had worn since she was a baby. Leela came to a horrible conclusion. She thought these mutants had killed her parents and stolen the bracelet. In her rage, she pulled out a gun and prepared to murder them. Just before she could shoot, Fry came crashing through the ceiling and stopped her. He removed the mutants' hoods and revealed that they were Leela's actual parents. They were not her killers, but the people who had loved her and watched over her for her entire life. The reunion between Leela and her parents was emotional and complicated. Leela was thrilled to finally meet her parents after spending her whole life wondering about them. But she was also devastated to learn that she was not actually an alien at all. She was a mutant, which meant under the law she was not allowed to live on the surface. Her entire life had been built on a lie, and now that the truth was known, everything would change. Morris and Munda explained why they had given her up, telling her they wanted her to have opportunities and a life that no mutant could ever have. They had sacrificed their relationship with their daughter so she could be free. The situation became even more complicated when Fry accidentally revealed Leela's secret to the wealthy surface dwellers at Mrs. Astor's charity fundraiser. He mentioned that Leela was a mutant in front of everyone, which resulted in the police being called. Leela was immediately arrested and given permanent deportation, meaning she was forced to leave the surface forever and go live in the sewers. Fry tried to help by talking to the mayor, but this backfired terribly. When the mayor learned that the entire Planet Express crew had knowingly harbored a mutant, he sentenced all of them, except Bender, to 2 weeks in the sewers as punishment. Amy, Fry, Hermes, Zoidberg, and Professor Farnsworth were all thrown underground to experience the deplorable conditions firsthand. Living in the sewers was a nightmare for everyone who was not used to it. The conditions were absolutely terrible and dangerous. Mutants walked around in toxic sludge, worked on pipelines that could explode at any moment, and lived surrounded by garbage and sewage. Leela's parents gave her a tour of the sewer, showing her landmarks like Old Filthful, a geyser that shot up sewage while mutants took pictures before being covered in waste. There were tunnels and chambers everywhere, some leading to even deeper levels that the regular mutants called the sub-sewers. Some mutants believed there was an even more freakish race of sub-mutants living in those deeper levels, though others dismissed this as just a suburban legend. After being forced to live in the sewers, Leela became enraged at the inequality and injustice that mutants faced every single day. She swore that she hated every single person on the surface for making the mutants live in such horrible conditions. Leela decided that something had to change, and she was going to be the one to change it. She began organizing the mutants into a movement fighting for equal rights and access to the surface. The mutants held rallies where they chanted slogans like 2, 4, 6 eyes, mutant people will arise. They started what they called the Devolution Revolution, with even the mutated members of the rock band Devo coming to perform at a concert for mutant rights. The mutants began their revolt by sending toxic sewage back up to the surface, flooding the streets of New York with waste. Bender helped them by bending the West Side Pipeway, which redirected all the sewage that normally flowed underground back up to street level. Soon, the entire city was covered in toxic sludge, and the surface dwellers were forced to deal with the same filth that mutants lived in every day. The mutants then organized the Million Mutant March, where they came up to the surface en masse to demand equal rights and the freedom to live above ground. Leela led the protest, giving speeches about dignity and equality, while thousands of mutants stood behind her. The surface government tried to stop the protest by pumping all the sewage into a place called Madison Cube Garden and then releasing it in a massive tidal wave aimed at washing the mutants back underground. But Fry used a special quantum gemerald ring to part the wave of sewage, like Moses parting the Red Sea, protecting the mutants from being swept away. The protesters continued demanding their rights, and Fry made an emotional speech about how Mr. Astor, the husband of the wealthy widow, had once given up his seat on an evacuating vehicle to save a mutant mother and child when a massive street vehicle called the Land Titanic sank in the year 2912. Fry showed Mrs. Astor the passenger manifest from the Land Titanic wreckage, proving that mutants had been aboard the ship. He argued that if Mrs. Astor truly wanted to honor her husband's memory, she should treat mutants with the same compassion and dignity he had shown. Mrs. Astor was finally moved by this appeal and agreed to support mutant rights. She had the mayor officially grant mutants their freedom, making it legal for them to live on the surface for the first time in history. This happened in the year 3010, and it was a massive victory for mutant equality. From that point forward, mutants were allowed to come and go as they pleased between the surface and the sewers. They could live above ground, hold regular jobs, and be treated as normal citizens of New York. The centuries of discrimination and segregation finally came to an end, though many surface dwellers still looked down on mutants and considered them inferior. Even with legal equality, life remained difficult for many mutants. They still faced prejudice and disgust from surface dwellers who found their physical appearances disturbing. Many mutants continued living in the sewers simply because that was all they had ever known, and they felt more comfortable there among their own people. The transformation from an oppressed underclass to legal citizens with equal rights happened relatively quickly in legal terms, but changing hearts and minds would take much longer. The mutant underworld beneath New York represented a shameful chapter in the future's history, one where an entire population was forced to live in sewage and work in dangerous conditions simply because toxic waste had altered their DNA. The story of the sewer mutants showed that even 1,000 years in the future, humanity still struggled with basic concepts of equality and dignity. The surface world was happy to exploit mutant labor to maintain their comfortable lives, but they refused to treat those workers as equals or even acknowledge them as fully human. The mutants maintained the pipes, cleaned the sewage, and kept civilization running, yet they were rewarded with discrimination, poverty, and banishment to a toxic underworld. Only through organized resistance and revolt did the mutants finally win the rights they deserved, proving that even in the 31st century, freedom and equality still had to be fought for rather than simply given. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the Brainheads Museum, celebrities trapped for centuries. In the gleaming city of New York during the 31st century, there exists one of the strangest and most remarkable institutions ever created by human civilization. The Head Museum stands as a testament to technological achievement and historical preservation, housing thousands of severed heads kept alive in glass jars filled with special liquid. These are not just any heads. They belong to the most famous, important, and notorious people from throughout human history, all preserved and conscious centuries after their bodies died or were separated from them. The technology that made this bizarre museum possible was invented by a man named Ron Popeil sometime before or during the 23rd century. Popeil was already known for creating products like Mr. Microphone and the spray-on toupee, but his greatest invention turned out to be the system that allows human heads to remain alive indefinitely inside glass jars. He announced this achievement himself at the Academy of Inventors annual symposium, proudly declaring that he had invented the technology to keep human heads alive in jars. The invention revolutionized how society dealt with death and historical preservation, allowing famous people to literally live forever as talking heads. The liquid inside each jar is called H2OG fat, a special preservative fluid that keeps the heads alive and healthy. The liquid is rich in nutrients and apparently safe to drink, with people describing it as refreshing. The most important ingredient in H2OG fat is powdered crystalline opal, a rare mineral with unusual temporal properties. This opal creates a temporal stasis effect that keeps each head preserved at the same age and condition they had during their respective era. The heads can eat and drink normally, and any waste is presumably filtered by the jar system. They can even survive outside their jars for an undefined period of time. The Head Museum itself is located in New York and serves as an interactive exhibit showcasing history's most important people from all fields, including politics, television, sports, entertainment, and even crime. The museum is free to visit on Tuesdays, making it accessible to regular citizens who want to see famous historical figures up close. When Fry first entered the museum in the year 3000, he was greeted by Leonard Nimoy's head, which sat on a platform in the middle of one of the rooms. Nimoy welcomed visitors by saying, "Welcome to the Head Museum. I'm Leonard Nimoy." When Fry asked him to do the Vulcan salute from Star Trek, Nimoy chuckled and said he did not do that anymore, since he no longer had hands to perform the gesture with. Nimoy explained what the heads do all day when Fry asked about their existence. He said they share their wisdom with those who seek it, and described it as a life of quiet dignity. However, this peaceful description was immediately contradicted when a museum attendant entered for feeding time, shaking what looked like fish food over the jars. Nimoy and other heads rose to the surface of their liquid and began feeding like hungry goldfish. The reality of life as a preserved head turned out to be less dignified than Nimoy had suggested. The museum contains several different sections and halls dedicated to various categories of famous people. The most prominent area is the Hall of Presidents, which displays the preserved heads of every president of the United States. This hall underwent reconstruction sometime between the year 3000 and 3010, changing its appearance and layout. The presidents on display range from George Washington, who died in 1799, to more recent leaders from the 20th and 21st centuries. More important presidents like George Washington and Harry Truman are presented respectfully in prominent positions, while less popular politicians are relegated to less prestigious locations. There is even a closet of presidential losers, where unsuccessful candidates like Bob Dole are kept. The presidential heads are not just silent exhibits. They are fully conscious and aware, capable of having conversations and expressing opinions about current events. Many of them complain about their existence or make demands of the museum staff. When Fry worked his night job at the head museum, feeding the preserved heads of the presidents, he heard constant complaints and requests. Bill Clinton's head would complain that the place was a snooze and challenge President Taft's head to pie-eating contests. Andrew Jackson's head would demand Tennessee loopy juice to drink. Warren Harding's head wanted loose women who were not afraid to show a little ankle. Fry had to remind them all of the rules, which stated, "No fun allowed." The museum staff changed multiple times over the years. In one period, there was a woman named Dr. Cahill who worked there and had authority over the night shift employees. When she left for her other night job, she would warn the staff member with strict instructions. She told them to remember no loud noise, no head bowling, and no parties, threatening that if they broke these rules, it would be their own head in a jar as punishment. Fry worked at the museum as a night security guard and custodian, responsible for feeding the presidents and maintaining order during the overnight hours. Dr. Cahill once accidentally called him Lars, which was actually a reference to a time-traveling duplicate of Fry, who also worked at the museum during a different time period. The museum houses an enormous variety of celebrity heads from different eras and fields. Among the heads visible when Fry and Bender first visited were Johnny Carson, Lucille Ball, Ed Begley Jr., David Duchovny, Gillian Anderson, Elizabeth Taylor, Dennis Rodman, Billy Corgan, Matt Groening, Barbra Streisand, Rodney Dangerfield, and Dick Clark. The Hall of Presidents showed Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, Warren G. Harding, Andrew Jackson, Grover Cleveland, who appeared twice for his 2 non-consecutive terms, and Benjamin Harrison. There were also sections for television stars, porn stars, and even criminals who had their own separate halls. One of the most remarkable aspects of the head jar technology is that it can preserve people who died long before the technology was invented. This is accomplished through cloning techniques that can recreate both the physical head and somehow restore the memories and personality of the deceased person. Historical figures like George Washington, who died in 1799, and Abraham Lincoln, who died in 1865, were brought back to life as heads in jars centuries after their deaths. Even Elvis Presley, who died in 1977, appears as a head despite dying decades before Fry was frozen. The exact process of how dead people are resurrected and have their memories restored remains unclear, but the technology clearly works because the museum is filled with people from throughout history. The temporal properties of the crystalline opal in the preservative fluid create some unusual effects. If someone drinks the liquid from a head's jar, they, and everyone standing near them, will temporarily time travel back to the era when that head's owner originally lived. This was discovered when the Planet Express crew had an unauthorized party at the head museum one night. Dr. Zoidberg licked the head of Lyndon B. Johnson and was momentarily transported back to the 1,960 seconds where he met Andy Warhol. When they drank more of the fluid from different presidential jars, they were sent to various points in American history. Professor Farnsworth figured out that this time travel effect was caused by the powdered crystalline opal used to make the preservative fluid. The opal keeps the heads alive in a temporal bubble connected to their original time period. The heads in jars are not simply museum exhibits trapped behind glass. They can and do perform normal roles in society if they choose to leave the museum. Many heads have integrated themselves into life in the 31st century, taking on important positions and responsibilities. The most famous example is Richard Nixon's head, who became president of Earth in the year 3000. Nixon had been living in the presidential wing of the Head Museum after his death in 1994, but he was not content to spend eternity as a mere exhibit. Nixon seized an opportunity when Bender pawned his robot body during a titanium shortage. Nixon's head purchased Bender's body and attached himself to it, giving him mobility and a physical form once again. He then announced his candidacy for president of Earth, arguing that he could run for a third time because, while no body can be president more than twice, he had a brand new body, and therefore the law did not apply. This technicality allowed him to enter the race. Nixon campaigned aggressively with his new robotic body and swept the robot vote, winning the election by a single vote. He remained president of Earth for years afterward, appearing in many episodes as the corrupt and power-hungry leader. Not all heads enjoy their existence in the museum. In conversations with Bender, several heads expressed dissatisfaction with their situation. Nixon himself told Bender that being a head was a sad and lonely life, not the peaceful existence that Leonard Nimoy had described. When Bender asked if being a head was great, Nixon replied, "No, son, it's a sad and lonely life." Then he added, "That's my style. I like to kick them when they're down," showing his characteristic, cruel sense of humor. Many heads refer to themselves in the third person as their head rather than themselves, as when Nixon famously declared, "I am not a crook's head," instead of simply saying he was not a crook. The museum serves multiple purposes in 31st century society. On one level, it functions as an educational institution where people can come to learn about history directly from the people who lived it. Students and tourists can walk through the halls and see famous figures from the past, ask them questions, and hear their perspectives on historical events. On another level, it serves as a form of entertainment, with people visiting to gawk at celebrities and historical figures who are now reduced to heads in jars. The heads themselves seem aware of this dual nature, with some embracing their role as educators and others resenting being treated as curiosities. The technology also raises profound ethical questions that the show does not fully explore, but are implicit in the premise. People are given immortality of a sort, but at the cost of their bodies and much of their autonomy. They are dependent on the museum staff to feed them and maintain their jars. They are on display for anyone to see, with no real privacy. Some heads choose to leave the museum and try to build new lives in the future, but many remain there indefinitely, spending centuries watching the world change through a glass jar. The museum's appearance changed significantly between the year 3000 and 3010. The building underwent reconstruction that altered both its exterior and some of its interior halls, including the Hall of Presidents. The staff responsible for feeding the heads and maintaining the facility also changed multiple times during this period. Despite these changes, the museum's basic function remained the same throughout. It continued to house thousands of preserved heads and serve as a living history exhibit where the famous dead could interact with the living citizens of the future. When Fry and Bender hid in the museum while running from Leela and the police, Fry accidentally bumped into shelves holding presidential heads. Richard Nixon's head fell off the shelf and his jar smashed on the ground. Nixon was furious and declared, "That's it, you just made my list," referencing the enemies list he kept during his presidency. This incident showed that the heads were fragile and could be damaged if their jars were broken, though Nixon apparently survived the fall and was able to get a new jar since he continued appearing throughout the series. The Head Museum represents one of the most audacious and bizarre concepts in all of science fiction. It takes the idea of preserving historical figures and pushes it to an absurd extreme, creating a world where Abraham Lincoln can give advice about current politics and Leonard Nimoy can greet tourists at a museum entrance. The technology that makes it possible may be scientifically questionable, but within the logic of the Futurama universe, it works perfectly. Heads from throughout history live on in glass jars, sharing their wisdom, complaining about their treatment, and occasionally escaping to take over robot bodies and run for political office. The museum serves as both a celebration of human achievement in preserving life and consciousness, and a somewhat dark commentary on how society treats its historical figures. These once powerful people are reduced to exhibits in a museum that is free on Tuesdays, fed like goldfish by minimum wage employees, and subjected to the rules of people living centuries after they should have died. Yet they persist, conscious and aware, trapped in an immortality that some embrace and others clearly regret. The Head Museum stands as one of the strangest landmarks in New York, a place where the past literally lives on into the future, preserved in glass jars filled with H2OG fat and powdered crystalline opal. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the dark origins of Bender, serial killer, identity theft, and beyond. Philip J. Fry had a problem. The delivery boy from the 20th century, who woke up frozen in the year 3000, had developed what anyone with eyes could see was a serious addiction. The beverage in question was called Slurm, and it dominated every corner of the 31st century marketplace like nothing else. Slurm was everywhere. Commercials played on every television screen. Vending machines dispensed it on every street corner. People drank it at parties, at work, during meals, and basically any other time they could get their hands on a can. The drink came in the standard green cans that everyone recognized, and it tasted like nothing else in the known universe. It was sweet, fizzy, refreshing, and somehow impossible to stop drinking once you started. Fry sat on the couch at Planet Express, watching television with Bender one evening. 4 empty Slurm cans already sat on the coffee table in front of them. Fry held a 5th can in his hand and kept drinking even as he watched the show. They were watching All My Circuits, the robot soap opera that Bender loved, when suddenly the program cut to a commercial break. The advertisement that appeared on screen made Fry sit up straight and pay attention. A hand reached across the screen and grabbed a can of Slurm. The hand belonged to a slug-like alien creature riding a surfboard. 2 attractive female aliens stood on either side of him as he guzzled down the beverage. This was Slurm's Mackenzie, the official mascot of Slurm and the most popular party animal in the galaxy. Slurms. Mackenzie lived the dream life that everyone wanted. He surfed, he partied, he was surrounded by beautiful companions, and he always had a can of Slurm in his hand. The commercial announced something that made Fry nearly jump off the couch with excitement. The Slurm Corporation was holding a contest. Somewhere out there, hidden inside certain cans of Slurm, were special golden bottle caps. Anyone who found one of these rare golden caps would win an incredible prize. The winner would get a free trip to the Slurm bottling plant on the distant planet Wormulon. They would receive a complete guided tour of the famous Slurm factory where the drink was made. And best of all, they would get to attend an exclusive party with Slurm's Mackenzie himself. Fry became obsessed. He drank Slurm like his life depended on it. Can after can disappeared down his throat as he searched desperately for that golden bottle cap. His teeth started falling out from all the sugar. He created a literal pile of discarded teeth that he tossed aside without a second thought. He kept drinking and drinking and drinking, but the winning cap never appeared. Meanwhile, Bender walked into the Planet Express building one day, feeling terrible. The robot complained that something was wrong with his internal systems. He had developed a high fever of 900 degrees Fahrenheit, which was unusual even for a robot. Professor Farnsworth saw this as the perfect opportunity to test out his latest invention. The old professor had created something he called the F-ray. This device looked like a flashlight, but it had a special property. When you shined the F-ray at any object, you could see right through it to whatever was inside. The professor pointed the F-ray at Bender and immediately discovered the problem. Amy's watch was rattling around inside the robot's chest cavity. Bender had stolen it at some point and forgotten about it. After the professor removed the watch and fixed the problem, he handed the F-ray to Fry and Bender with instructions to put it away in a safe place. Fry and Bender had other ideas. They took the F-ray outside and started using it to look inside everything they could find. Bender pointed it at Fry's crotch, and the radiation made Fry temporarily sterile. He screamed in pain and yelled something about his sperm. Bender found this hilarious and did it again, but this time Fry felt nothing because all his sperm were already gone. They kept playing with the device around the city. Bender used it to look inside hot dogs at a convenience store, and the F-ray revealed disturbing debris floating inside the meat. They pointed it at a Slurm blimp floating overhead, and it exploded from the radiation, forcing them to run away before anyone caught them. Eventually, Fry had a realization. He wondered out loud if there might be some way to look inside Slurm cans without opening them first. That way, he could find the golden bottle cap without having to drink 90,000 cans of Slurm. Bender was using the F-ray to look inside something else and barely heard what Fry said. Fry started to get an idea. He went back and forth for several seconds, saying yes, no, wait, maybe, no, yes, false alarm, until finally he shouted that yes, he definitely had an idea this time. The two friends spent hours using the F-ray to scan Slurm cans. They looked inside, can after can after can. Bender took a can away from a small boy with a red balloon on the street. The boy started crying. Bender scanned it with the F-ray, saw it was empty, and gave it back. The boy stopped crying. Then Bender pointed the F-ray at the balloon and made it explode just for fun. The boy started crying again. They scanned a Slurm dispenser at a store. They checked the company warehouse. After examining what Fry estimated to be about 90,000 cans, they finally gave up. The F-ray had found them absolutely nothing. They returned to Planet Express, defeated, and threw the device onto the table where Professor Farnsworth and Leela were playing three-dimensional Scrabble. The letters on the professor's rack spelled out most of the word Futurama, missing only one letter A because the rack could only hold 7 letters at a time. Exhausted from their failed search, Fry decided to just relax with a nice cold can of Slurm from the refrigerator. He popped open the can and took a big gulp. Suddenly he started choking. Something was stuck in his throat. He coughed and sputtered until finally the object came loose and he could see what it was, the golden bottle cap. The winning bottle cap had been sitting in the Planet Express refrigerator the entire time. The Planet Express crew flew their ship to the planet Wormulon, home of the famous Slurm factory. When they arrived, they were greeted by an alien named Glurmo. This creature wore a purple tailcoat and a top hat. looking very much like a ringmaster from a circus. Glurmo spoke in an overly cheerful voice and welcomed them to what he called the Slurm's centralized industrial fabrication unit. Before they could party with Slurm's Mackenzie, Glurmo explained, they would first need to take a complete tour of the factory to see how Slurm was made. The crew boarded a small paddle boat and began floating down a river. But this was not an ordinary river filled with water. This entire river was made of pure Slurm. The liquid flowed green and fizzy through an enormous room decorated to look like a beautiful garden. Trees grew from the ground, with Slurm cans hanging from their branches like fruit. Flowers bloomed in every direction. And working throughout this garden were small, orange-skinned aliens with green hair. They wore striped outfits and looked cheerful as they carried barrels and operated machinery. Professor Farnsworth asked Glurmo who these horrible orange creatures were. Glurmo introduced them as the Grunka Lunkas, the workers who manufactured Slurm at the factory. The professor immediately announced that he hated them. Glurmo explained the process of making Slurm as the boat drifted along. He said the Grunka Lunkas combined approximately 900 different ingredients to create the special formula. They mixed hydrogen and oxygen to make water. They added various chemicals and compounds, but the very last ingredient, the one that made Slurm truly special and incredibly addictive, remained a closely guarded secret. Fry became very interested in learning what this secret ingredient was. He kept asking questions about it. Glurmo politely but firmly refused to reveal the information. That was when the Grunka Lunkas started singing. They broke into a song, warning Fry not to ask questions about the secret ingredient. They sang about how the secret was best left alone and he should just enjoy the drink without worrying about what went into it. Professor Farnsworth told them rudely to shut up because he hated their songs. Bender eventually screamed at them to shut the hell up when they tried to sing a third time. Glurmo scolded the workers and told them he did not pay them to sing. He informed them they had just used up their bathroom break for the day. One of the Grunka Lunkas muttered that Glurmo was a hard ass. Glurmo, despite being far away in the boat, somehow heard this comment and yelled back that he had heard it. The tour continued and they saw an elderly worm with a long white beard. This was the Slurm Master, responsible for checking every batch of Slurm for proper color and taste. The old worm held up a glass of Slurm and examined it carefully. Then he tasted it, and tasted it, and tasted it some more. Fry watched this, with his mouth hanging open, and drool practically dripping from his lips. He was incredibly thirsty, and wanted nothing more than to drink some of the Slurm flowing all around them. He leaned over the edge of the boat and tried to scoop some up with his hands. Glurmo immediately told him that no food or drink was allowed during the tour. Fry would have to wait until the party with Slurm's Mackenzie. Fry could not wait. He leaned out even further, trying to get just one taste of the Slurm River. He lost his balance and fell overboard with a splash. Leela sighed with frustration and dove in after him to save him from drowning. Fry apparently did not know how to swim. Bender saw both of them jump into the river and decided to join them because everyone else was doing it and he wanted to be popular. All three of them got sucked into a whirlpool that pulled them under the surface. They got dragged through underwater tunnels and finally deposited in a dark cave beneath the factory. The three friends picked themselves up and looked around, trying to figure out where they were. They found themselves in tunnels carved through rock deep underground. They walked through the passages, trying to find a way back to the surface. Eventually, they discovered something that made them stop in their tracks. They had found the real Slurm factory. The factory they had just toured with, Glurmo and the Grunka Lunkas, had been completely fake. Everything they had seen was an elaborate show designed to fool visitors. The real manufacturing process happened down here, in these caves, where no one was supposed to see it. They followed the tunnel into a large cavern and saw the production line. Slurm cans rode along on a conveyor belt, and at the end of that conveyor belt stood an enormous worm. This creature was gigantic, easily the size of a building. It had the basic shape of a worm or slug, but with a dark purple and pink coloration. This was the Slurm Queen, and as Fry, Leela, and Bender watched in horror, the Slurm Queen lifted her rear end and squeezed. A thick green liquid shot out from her back orifice, directly into the Slurm cans passing underneath. That was it. That was the secret ingredient. That was the only ingredient. Slurm was not made from 900 carefully selected components. Slurm was nothing more than a secretion from the butt of a giant worm. The three of them stood there in shock and disgust. Leela stated the obvious fact that this secretion was the only ingredient in Slurm. Fry said, "Ew," and kept drinking from the can he was holding. Leela slapped it out of his hand. But they had been spotted. The Slurm Queen heard them and lifted her massive body up before slamming it down, trying to crush the intruders. Fry, Leela, and Bender ran down a corridor trying to escape. They somehow ended up running in a circle and wound up right back where they started. Glurmo appeared with armed guards. Leela immediately kicked into action. She used her martial arts skills and chopped Glurmo in half with her hand. Both halves of Glurmo's body fell to the ground, but then each half turned into a smaller, complete copy of Glurmo. The two mini Glurmos ganged up on Leela and overpowered her. The guards captured all three of them and dragged them to a torture chamber. The Slurm workers had prepared elaborate death traps for each of them. Bender was placed into a machine designed to flatten him and turn his metal body into Slurm cans. The machine started up and punched one large hole through his torso before anyone could stop it. Leela was attached to a crane that began lowering her into a vat of royal Slurm. This was a special, concentrated version of the beverage that would supposedly transform her into another Slurm queen, and Fry was strapped into a chair with a huge metal trough placed in front of him. This trough contained Super Slurm, an ultra-concentrated form of the drink so delicious and so addictive that anyone who tasted it would be unable to stop eating until they literally exploded from consumption. The guards left them alone with their death traps running, which was a terrible mistake. Fry struggled against the Super Slurm. He wanted desperately to save his friends, but the addictive beverage called to him. He could not resist its pull. He could not overcome the addiction. However, he came up with a solution. Since he could not stop drinking the Super Slurm, he would just drag the entire heavy trough with him. He pulled with all his strength and managed to move the massive container across the floor. He dragged it over to the crane controls while continuing to slurp down the super concentrated drink. He freed Leela from the crane just in time. She immediately went to help Bender, though she was slightly too late as the hole had already been punched through his body. Then Leela grabbed the trough of Super Slurm away from Fry and dumped it down a drainage grate. Fry screamed in anguish, watching his beloved concentrated Slurm disappear forever. They ran for the exit, trying to escape the factory. The Slurm Queen chased after them in a rage. The secret was out, and she knew the company was ruined. Just when it seemed like the massive worm would catch them and crush them beneath her enormous body, someone unexpected arrived to help. Slurm's Mackenzie appeared, the party worm mascot himself. Years of non-stop partying had exhausted him completely. He was tired. He was burned out. He had sacrificed his entire life to be the face of Slurm Corporation, partying when he did not want to party, drinking when he was not thirsty, maintaining an image that brought him no real joy. But in this final moment, Slurm's Mackenzie found purpose. He threw himself between the Slurm Queen and the escaping crew members. He held the massive creature back long enough for Fry, Leela, Bender, and his two female companions to reach safety. Slurm's Mackenzie gave his life so they could escape. The Slurm Queen screamed after them that they had destroyed everything. Now that people knew the truth about where Slurm came from, the factory would be shut down and the company would be finished. The crew made it back to the surface and flew away from Wormulon. Professor Farnsworth immediately wanted to report the truth to the authorities. He contacted the police and tried to explain that Slurm was made from worm secretions and the factory should be closed down immediately. But Fry realized something. If the professor succeeded in shutting down the factory, there would be no more Slurm, ever. The drink he loved more than anything would disappear forever. He could not allow that to happen. Fry started making gestures suggesting the professor was crazy. He told the authorities that his grandpa was just making up insane stories and should not be believed. Professor Farnsworth tried to explain that Fry was actually his uncle from the 20th century, who had been frozen for 1,000 years. But this explanation only made the professor sound more delusional. The authorities decided the old man was simply senile and ignored his warnings completely. The Slurm factory remained open. Production continued, and Fry kept drinking Slurm despite knowing exactly what it really was and where it came from. Back on the Planet Express ship, everyone celebrated with Slurm's, Mackenzie's two female companions. They partied and drank Slurm. Bender took a sip from a can, and the liquid poured out through the hole in his torso and into Fry's mouth below. Bender remarked that the drink was not that bad. Professor Farnsworth sat in the corner, grumbling about how no one believed him. But everyone else just kept on partying and drinking their Slurm, perfectly happy to ignore the disturbing truth they had learned in the caves beneath the factory on Wormulon. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the Frozen Time Paradox, Fry's unique brain, and his twin role. Philip J. Fry had always been unlucky. The delivery boy from the 20th century seemed to stumble through life, making mistake after mistake. He fell into a cryogenic tube on New Year's Eve, 1999, and woke up 1,000 years later in the year 3000. He found a job delivering packages for Planet Express. He made friends with a robot named Bender and fell in love with a one-eyed woman named Leela. Life in the future was strange and often dangerous, but Fry adapted the best he could. What he did not know, what nobody knew for many years, was that Fry was the single most important person in the entire universe. His brain held a secret that would save all of existence multiple times, and that secret began with a catastrophic mistake involving time travel and his own family tree. The Planet Express crew gathered in space on September 21st in the year 3002 to witness something spectacular. Professor Farnsworth had taken them to watch a supernova explode up close. The ancient scientist considered this a special treat to see a star die in such dramatic fashion. Fry decided this would be the perfect time to make some popcorn. He found a package of corn wrapped in metal foil and popped it into the ship's microwave oven. This turned out to be a terrible decision. The metal foil caused the microwave to malfunction and emit a strange field of blue radiation. At the exact same moment, the supernova released its own burst of red radiation. The two waves of energy collided in the middle of the ship. The resulting reaction tore open a hole in space and time. The ship got sucked into a swirling tunnel filled with floating clocks. When they finally emerged from the other side, everything looked wrong. There was no space traffic. There were no signals. The crew realized with growing horror that they had traveled backward through time. The ship crashed in the desert near Roswell, New Mexico. The impact threw Bender through the windshield because he had refused to wear a seatbelt. The robot shattered into dozens of pieces scattered across the sand. His head rolled away from the crash site and remained conscious. The rest of the crew scrambled out to assess the damage. Professor Farnsworth examined his instruments and made a shocking announcement. According to his digital chronograph, the date was July 9th, 1947. They had traveled back over 1,000 years into Earth's past. The military stationed at nearby Roswell Air Base heard the crash and immediately sent soldiers to investigate. Dr. Zoidberg stayed behind to collect all of Bender's scattered parts, while the others fled back to the ship. The soldiers captured Zoidberg and dragged him to the base for examination. They assumed he was an alien visitor. The military found all of Bender's robot pieces and mistakenly reconstructed them into the shape of a flying saucer. Professor Farnsworth explained the danger of their situation. They needed to find a way back to the future without changing anything about the past. Any alterations to history could have devastating consequences. The microwave oven they had used was destroyed in the crash. They needed a replacement to create the same reaction and reopen the time portal. Unfortunately, microwave ovens did not exist as consumer products in 1947. The professor realized they could steal a microwave radar dish from the military base as a substitute, but this would require infiltrating the base. Fry mentioned that his grandfather Enos worked at that very base. Professor Farnsworth immediately forbade Fry from going anywhere near Enos. He explained the grandfather paradox. If Fry accidentally caused Enos to die, then Fry's father would never be born. If Fry's father was never born, then Fry himself would never exist. The warning had the opposite effect. Fry became obsessed with protecting Enos from any possible danger. Fry and Bender's head snuck onto the military base. Fry immediately located his grandfather, Enos Fry, a simple young private who spoke with a thick rural accent. Enos seemed friendly but not particularly bright. He kept saying things like "gadzooks" and showed signs of behavior that worried Fry. He began to fear that Enos might not actually father his grandmother Mildred's child. Fry followed Enos everywhere, trying to keep him safe. His paranoid overreactions ended up putting Enos in far more danger than he would have faced otherwise. At one point, Fry locked Enos inside what he thought was a secure building to protect him. The building happened to sit directly on a nuclear weapons testing range. A massive atomic bomb detonated and obliterated the structure with Enos inside. Fry watched in absolute horror as the explosion consumed his grandfather. He waited to feel himself disappearing from existence, but nothing happened. Fry remained completely solid and alive. Fry returned to town, confused about how he could still exist if Enos was dead. He found his grandmother Mildred at a diner where she worked. She had just received the news about Enos dying in the nuclear test. Fry tried to comfort her. They talked for hours. Fry reasoned that since he still existed, the man who died could not have been his real grandfather. That meant Mildred could not be his real grandmother. This logic seemed sound to him at the time. Mildred, vulnerable and sad about losing her fiancé, became attracted to Fry. She invited him back to her place. Fry convinced himself there was no problem, since they were not actually related. They ended up sleeping together. The next morning brought a horrifying revelation. Mildred started behaving exactly like Fry's grandmother. She put on glasses and a shawl. Her voice changed to sound old and scratchy. She pulled out knitting needles. She needed a hearing trumpet to hear properly. Fry realized with dawning horror that she was his grandmother after all. The man who died in the nuclear explosion was not his grandfather. Fry had just made himself his own grandfather. Professor Farnsworth discovered what happened and completely gave up on protecting the timeline. He shouted for causality to choke on his actions. The crew decided to forget about being careful. They launched a full-scale assault on the military base. They rescued Zoidberg from his alien examination. They stole the microwave radar dish they needed. They destroyed most of the facilities during their escape. Bender's head fell off the ship during the return flight and got left behind in 1947. The crew successfully traveled back to their own time in the year 3000. Once back in the future, Fry remembered that Bender's head must still be buried where it fell. They returned to the ruins of Roswell with a metal detector and dug up the head. They reattached it to Bender's mangled floating body. Everyone laughed about their adventure and agreed history had not changed in any meaningful way. They had no idea what Fry's actions had actually done. The consequences of that night took time to reveal themselves. Fry went about his normal life, delivering packages and hanging out with his friends. Strange things started happening around Earth. A trail of destroyed planets appeared leading toward the solar system. Each world had been rendered completely stupid. Every intelligent being on those planets had their brains reduced to useless mush. The threat was heading straight for Earth. One day, in February of the year 3001, giant floating brains appeared in the sky above New York. These creatures were called the Brain Spawn. They sent down beams of blue light that instantly made everyone stupid. The entire population of Earth lost their intelligence in moments. Professors forgot their research. Engineers could not remember how machines worked. Even the smartest people became dumber than rocks. Everyone became stupid, except for one person. Philip J. Fry remained completely unaffected by the Brain Spawn's attack. Fry discovered that morning that every single person in the city had become an idiot. His friends and co-workers could barely speak. They forgot basic information about their own lives. Fry tried desperately to help them, but he did not understand what was happening. Meanwhile, Leela had learned the truth from an unexpected source. Nibbler, her adorable pet, revealed himself to be far more than he appeared. Nibbler was actually Lord Nibbler, an ancient alien being from a species called the Niblonians. They had been fighting the Brain Spawn since the beginning of the universe. Nibbler took Leela to his homeworld at planet Eternium, at the exact center of the universe. The Niblonian Council explained everything to her. The Brain Spawn traveled from world to world, destroying all thought and intelligence. Their goal was to wipe out consciousness everywhere in the universe. The Niblonians had fought against them for billions of years, but could not stop them. The Niblonians told Leela something remarkable. Fry possessed a unique immunity to the Brain Spawn's mental attacks. He was the only being in all of existence who could resist their power. This immunity came from a missing brainwave. All living things, all robots, even certain trees, generated something called the delta brainwave. This was the brainwave that determined intelligence. The Brain Spawn controlled other beings by attacking this delta brainwave. Fry somehow lacked this brainwave entirely. His brain had cobbled together a working mind from a random collection of other brainwaves, like a prom dress made from carpet remnants, as Leela pointed out. Without the delta brainwave, the Brain Spawn could not affect him. The Niblonians sent Leela back to Earth with a message pinned to her clothing. She had to tell Fry to find the leader of the Brain Spawn and stop it. Leela landed on Earth and immediately became too stupid to remember the message. She retained just enough intelligence to tell Fry what he needed to do. Fry reasoned that the leader of Big Brains would be a huge nerd who would go to the library. He found the Big Brain at the New York Public Library. Surrounded by books, the creature trapped Fry and Leela in a mental realm based on classic literature. They found themselves living through scenes from Moby Dick, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, and Pride and Prejudice. But Fry discovered something important. Thinking hurt the brains. They hated consciousness and intelligence. Fry eventually escaped the mental prison by writing his own terrible story, filled with plot holes and spelling errors. In his poorly written narrative, he was crushed by a bookcase. The Big Brain announced it was leaving Earth for no reason, which was Fry's misspelling of the word reason. The Brain Spawn departed, and everyone's intelligence returned to normal. Nobody except Fry remembered what happened. The Niblonians consumed all the Brain Spawn bodies left behind on Earth. Nibbler returned to his cover as Leela's pet, but this was not the end of the story. 2 years later, in the year 3004, Fry felt increasingly useless and depressed. Leela and Bender returned from a delivery mission that Fry had missed. They had performed even better than usual and earned medals while Fry was looking up curse words in the dictionary. Leela asked Fry to walk Nibbler that evening. Fry complained that cleaning up after Nibbler was the only good he served. Nibbler shocked him by speaking. The supposedly dumb animal revealed his true intelligence. Nibbler knocked Fry unconscious and dragged him to his tiny spaceship. They flew to planet Eternium. The Niblonian Council, including Nibbler and his colleagues, Fiona and Ken, explained the full truth to Fry. The Brainspawn had constructed a massive memory bank called the Infosphere. This structure contained all information in the entire universe. Once the Brainspawn finished cataloging everything, they planned to destroy the universe so their knowledge would be complete. Only Fry could stop them. Fry learned exactly why he lacked the Delta brainwave. Ken, the Niblonian, explained that Fry had a genetic abnormality which resulted when he went back in time and became his own grandfather. The past nastification with his grandmother, as Fry put it. This created a paradox in his genetic code that eliminated the Delta brainwave. The Niblonians had known about this for a long time. They sent Nibbler to Earth in 1999 to make sure Fry got frozen. The Niblonians armed Fry with explosives and sent him to destroy the Infosphere before the Brainspawn could complete their mission. Fry successfully infiltrated the memory bank using a small vehicle. He planted the bomb, but got discovered. The Brainspawn identified him as the Fabled One and gloated that he could not escape. Fry activated the bomb, knowing he would be sent to an alternate universe along with the Infosphere. The Brainspawn showed Fry something that shattered his understanding of his life. They displayed footage from the night of December 31st, 1999. Fry saw himself falling backward into the cryogenic tube, but the recording revealed something hidden before. Nibbler had been under the desk that whole time. Nibbler deliberately pushed Fry's chair, causing him to fall. The Niblonians had ruined Fry's life on purpose. They froze him for 1,000 years, just so he could fight the Brainspawn in the future. Fry felt betrayed and angry. The Brainspawn offered him a deal. They would send him back in time to stop Nibbler from freezing him. Fry accepted and got transported back to applied cryogenics. He appeared behind Nibbler under the desk seconds before his past self would fall. He grabbed Nibbler and held him back. His past self remained safe in the chair as midnight approached. Nibbler begged Fry to let him complete the mission. The universe needed Fry in the future. Fry refused to listen until Nibbler asked a simple question. Was there anything in the future worth saving? Fry thought about it and mentioned Leela. Nibbler promised to help Fry win her heart if he would just let the plan proceed. Fry made his choice. He pushed his past self into the cryogenic tube. He told Nibbler to use a better escape vehicle next time. Then the explosion sent Fry and the Infosphere to the alternate dimension. When Fry returned, he had saved the entire universe from destruction. His unique brain disorder had proven essential to existence itself. 5 years after that, in the year 3009, Fry's special brain became important one final time. An accident on Mars left a piece of jewelry embedded in his head. This gave Fry temporary mind-reading abilities. A homeless man named Hutch found Fry and gave him a tinfoil hat to block out the overwhelming thoughts of everyone around him. Hutch discovered something amazing. He could not read Fry's mind at all. Hutch introduced Fry to a secret society called the Legion of Mad Fellows. They were all telepaths who wore tinfoil hats. They explained that ancient evil beings called the Dark Ones were trying to prevent the birth of a new life form. The Legion needed Fry's help because his unreadable mind made him invisible to the Dark Ones. They gave Fry a device called the Omega device that could temporarily disable a Dark One at close range. The Dark Ones could sense the thoughts of anyone who tried to make plans against them, but they could not sense Fry. Fry attended a ceremony where he was supposed to detonate explosives that would implode a violet dwarf star. He scanned the massive crowd, searching for someone whose mind he could not read. That person would be the Dark One. Fry could not find anyone with an unreadable mind. He suddenly realized the terrible truth. If his own mind could not be read, then he must be the Dark One himself. His friends arrived to stop the detonation. Fry activated the Omega device, expecting to disable himself. Nothing happened to Fry. Instead, a Martian muck leech that had been living on Leela fell to the ground stunned. The leech was the Dark One. With the creature temporarily disabled, the star imploded and gave birth to an encyclopod, a massive being that would preserve the DNA of endangered species. Once again, Fry's unique brain had saved the universe. The genetic abnormality that resulted from him becoming his own grandfather had made him the most important person in existence. his lack of the delta brainwave, his unreadable mind. These defects were actually the greatest gifts the universe could have received. Philip J. Fry, the unlucky delivery boy who could never do anything right, turned out to be the one person who could do everything that mattered. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the Futurama theorem and the chaos of the mind-switching machine. Professor Hubert J. Farnsworth and Amy Wong stood in the Planet Express laboratory, putting the finishing touches on a remarkable new invention. The professor had built a mind-switching machine. This device could take two people sitting in its chairs and swap their minds between their bodies. The consciousness from body A would move into body B, while the consciousness from body B would move into body A. The professor explained his motivation for creating such a device. He was over 160 years old, and his body was ancient and frail. He had spent his youth playing it safe and never taking risks. Now, in his extremely old age, he regretted all the thrills and adventures he had missed. If he could put his mind into a younger body, he could finally live life to the extreme. Amy had her own reasons for wanting to switch. She had once struggled with binge eating and an obsession with food. Through discipline, she had brought her appetite under control, but she still missed the demonic food lust of her youth. The professor's skinny, elderly body would allow her to eat anything she wanted without gaining weight because his ancient digestive system could barely process food. They sat in the chairs and activated the machine. The swap worked perfectly. The professor's consciousness now occupied Amy's young, athletic body. Amy's mind found itself trapped in the professor's incredibly old and fragile frame. The professor immediately rushed off to experience extreme sports and dangerous activities. He tried jet-powered snowboarding but wiped out almost immediately. Amy's body was not up to the task he had imagined. He returned to Amy disappointed. Meanwhile, Amy discovered a terrible problem. The professor's body was too aged and feeble for gorging on food. She could barely digest anything. They decided they needed to switch back to their original bodies. The professor pressed the button on the machine. It started beeping in an alarming way. He pressed it multiple times, but nothing happened. The professor examined the readouts and made a horrifying discovery. He had failed to take into account the cerebral immune response. Once two bodies had switched minds, they could never switch back. The machine would not work on the same pairing of bodies a second time. The immune systems in both brains developed a resistance that made a reverse swap impossible. The professor suggested a possible solution. Maybe they could swap back using a third body for temporary storage space. Bender volunteered to help. He announced he was 60% storage space and banged on his metal chest. Bender sat in the machine with the professor, who was still in Amy's body. They switched. Now, the professor's mind occupied Bender's robot body. Amy's mind remained in the professor's human body, and Bender's consciousness now lived in Amy's body. Bender immediately left to pursue his own agenda. He had been planning to steal the crown of Emperor Nikolai of the Robo-Hungarian Empire. Nikolai was visiting New York on his royal yacht. Bender figured he could seduce the guards while in Amy's attractive body. The professor suddenly realized the problem with their solution. Amy could switch bodies with him now. That would put Amy back in her original body, but then the professor would be stuck in Bender's body. And when Bender returned with Amy's body, the professor could not switch with him because those two bodies had already performed a swap. There was no way for the professor to get back to his own body. The professor decided to just run away in Bender's invincible robot body. He joined a robot circus and became a daredevil performer called Nonchalanto. Amy found herself stuck in the professor's terrible body. She switched with Leela, hoping to get a body capable of eating. Leela took the professor's body because she wanted the senior citizen discount at the movie theater. Amy immediately started gorging herself using Leela's body. She ate massive quantities of food and gained enormous amounts of weight. Leela had been dating Fry, and they had an ongoing argument about whether Fry only cared about her physical appearance. When Fry saw Leela now occupying the professor's elderly male body, he was repulsed. Leela accused him of only liking her for her body. Fry became angry at this accusation. To prove a point, he switched bodies with Dr. Zoidberg. Zoidberg was an alien lobster creature who most people found disgusting. Fry challenged Leela to a romantic dinner to prove that physical appearance did not matter to their relationship. Both of them tried to hide their revulsion at the other's new body. Meanwhile, Bender's criminal plan moved forward. He was in Amy's body trying to seduce Basil, the Emperor's cousin and chief of the royal guard. When Basil showed no interest, Bender simply knocked him unconscious. Emperor Nikolai discovered Bender and realized he was actually a robot inhabiting a human body. The Playboy Emperor had grown tired of his life of luxury and endless royal obligations. He wanted to experience life as a common robot. Bender wanted to steal the crown, but the professor had run away with his robot body. Bender could not become Emperor Nikolai while in Amy's human body. Bender switched with Scruffy's robotic wash bucket. Then Bender, as the wash bucket switched with Emperor Nikolai. Now, Bender's consciousness lived in the Emperor's robot body, and he could wear the crown. Emperor Nikolai, in the wash bucket body, wanted to meet common people. Bender pointed him toward Fry. But Fry's mind was now in Zoidberg's body, while Zoidberg's mind occupied Fry's body. The Emperor met Zoidberg in Fry's body, and they went back to Fry and Bender's apartment together. Hermes found Amy in Leela's body, eating entire sticks of butter. He was horrified at what she had done to herself. Hermes recommended they swap bodies right away. His body was already ruined from years of bureaucratic desk work. He could use Leela's body to finally lose weight through exercise. Amy took his body, thinking it would be better for eating than the professor's had been. At the circus, the professor met Big Bertha, a robot with a cannon in her stomach who shot other robots through the air. The professor's robot body was too big and heavy. Bertha was so old that shooting Bender's body would shatter her. The professor offered to switch bodies with her so she could have a younger robot body. Bertha proudly refused. Her body might be old, but it was hers. Every crack and dent was a memory of heavy things shot a long way. She would not abandon her body no matter how damaged it had become. Back on the royal yacht, Bender enjoyed the luxurious lifestyle. But when he tried to romance one of the Emperor's beautiful robot women, she pulled a gun on him. She was loyal to Nikolai and considered Bender an imposter. She tried to kill him. At Fry and Bender's apartment, Zoidberg, in Fry's body, accidentally destroyed the place. He ripped the dishwasher out of the wall, spraying water everywhere. Then, he tore out the oven, trying to boil water for food. Gas began leaking from the broken pipe. Emperor Nikolai, in the wash bucket body, pulled out a cigar. The resulting explosion destroyed the entire apartment. Fry in Zoidberg's body and Leela in the professor's body went to dinner at Elzar's restaurant. They tried desperately to maintain their romance, despite both being repulsed by the other's appearance. They eventually admitted they still had feelings for each other beyond physical attraction. Later that night, they had their first confirmed sexual encounter while in their swapped bodies. Meanwhile, Hermes in Leela's body worked hard to lose the weight that Amy had gained. He ran and exercised constantly. Amy switched from Hermes's body to a globetrotter named Sweet Clyde Dixon. The situation had spiraled completely out of control. Multiple people had switched multiple times. Nobody could remember who was in which body anymore. Emperor Nikolai needed to give a speech at the United Nations. Bender, as the emperor, had to perform this duty. The speech went terribly. A revolutionary named Basil challenged Bender to a duel. They fought with swords. Bender revealed he was not alone. He opened his chest compartment and 20 robot clowns emerged, all wielding swords. They killed Basil. The professor in Bender's body arrived at the United Nations. Everyone gathered together and realized they faced an impossible problem. Nobody could get back to their original body because so many swaps had occurred and no two bodies could switch with each other twice. Sweet Clyde Dixon, one of the Harlem Globetrotters, announced he had a solution. In the Futurama universe, the Globetrotters were genius mathematicians. Clyde explained that by introducing two new people who had never switched before, everyone could return to their original bodies. He and another Globetrotter named Bubblegum Tate would act as those two additional people. Clyde wrote out a mathematical proof on a blackboard. The theorem proved that regardless of how many mind switches had been made between any number of bodies, everyone could still be restored to their original bodies using only two extra people. These two people must not have had any mind switches prior. The proof was based on group theory, a branch of advanced mathematics that studies permutations and symmetry. Each mind swap represented a transposition in the symmetric group. The complicated jumble of switches could be decomposed into independent cycles. By introducing two fresh participants and deploying them in the correct sequence of switches, every cycle could be broken and resolved. The writer Ken Keeler, who held a PhD in applied mathematics from Harvard University, had created this proof specifically for the episode. It was the first known theorem to be created solely for entertainment purposes in a television show. Keeler himself preferred to call it a proof rather than a theorem because he felt it did not carry enough mathematical importance to deserve the title of theorem. But mathematicians around the world began referring to it as the Futurama theorem or Keeler's theorem. Clyde and Bubblegum began the sequence of switches needed to restore everyone. The The process was complicated but mathematically sound. They switched with various people in a specific order determined by the proof. First, they resolved one cycle of switches, then moved to the next cycle. The permutations unwound one transposition at a time. Each switch brought minds closer to their proper bodies. The sequence continued until every consciousness had been returned to its original body. Even Clyde and Bubblegum ended up back in their own bodies at the end. The professor found himself back in his ancient body. Amy returned to her own body. Bender regained his robot form. Fry and Leela were restored to their proper bodies. Hermes, Zoidberg, and everyone else resumed their normal physical forms. Emperor Nikolai and Scruffy's washbucket also returned to their original configurations. The ordeal had taught several lessons. Hermes revealed that Amy's temporary inability to eat had put her off food long enough for him to shed weight while in her body. Amy had been cured of her desire to binge eat. The professor had gotten thrills out of his system and learned that his old body was a memento of his life rather than a punishment for his age. Emperor Nikolai realized that common people did not have carefree lives as he had thought. He made Clyde a duke as thanks for solving the problem. As everyone walked away content that they were back in their proper bodies, Bender checked his chest compartment. He discovered the real crown was still inside Emperor Nikolai's body, where Bender had hidden it. Having learned absolutely nothing from the experience, Bender immediately began plotting to steal the crown again. The episode demonstrated one of Futurama's greatest strengths. The writers did not shy away from complex mathematics and rigorous scientific thinking. They created real solutions to fictional problems. The Futurama theorem became famous in mathematical circles as an elegant solution to a permutation problem. It illustrated how group theory could untangle even the most complicated arrangements. The episode won numerous awards, including a Writers Guild Award for Ken Keeler's script. Critics praised its mathematical complexity and tight plotting. Multiple plot threads wove together into a coherent whole. The body-swapping premise allowed for exploration of identity, relationships, and what makes a person who they are beyond their physical form. Fry and Leela discovered their connection went deeper than physical attraction. Big Bertha taught that bodies carry memories and meaning beyond mere function, and the mathematics showed that even the most tangled problems have solutions if approached with the right tools and knowledge. The episode remained a fan favorite and a proud moment for everyone involved with the show. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Bender's Eternal Torment, the true story of robot hell in Futurama. In the year 3000, robots have something that humans in Futurama seem to lack, a genuine fear of the afterlife. While most humans in the future are remarkably unreligious, robots have developed their own spiritual beliefs, complete with a heaven, a hell, and a devil who loves to make deals. Robot hell stands as one of the most creative and darkly comic concepts in Futurama, serving as both a parody of religious doctrine and a surprisingly consistent part of the show's mythology. The place where bad robots go when they sin is not some abstract concept. It is a real location that can be visited, escaped from, and even used as a venue for musical performances. The existence of robot hell first became known to viewers in the Season 1 episode titled Hell is Other Robots. The episode title itself is a clever reference to French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre's famous line from his play No Exit, where he wrote that hell is other people. In Futurama's version, hell is very much real, and it is specifically designed for robots who have broken their spiritual commitments. The story begins at a Beastie Boys concert at Madison Cube Garden. Bender Rodriguez, the foul-mouthed, cigar-smoking, kleptomaniac robot, attends the show with his friends Fry and Leela. After the concert, Bender reconnects with an old friend named Fender, who introduces him to a dangerous new habit. Fender takes Bender to a party where robots are engaging in something called jacking on. This is the robotic equivalent of drug abuse, where robots plug themselves directly into electrical sources to get high on pure electricity. Bender quickly becomes addicted to electricity. He sneaks around to feed his habit, plugging into any power source he can find. The addiction grows so severe that during an electrical storm, Bender climbs to the top of the Planet Express building and opens his chest cavity to absorb the lightning directly. He gets stuck welded to the side of the ship and nearly kills everyone aboard when his addiction causes him to drain power from critical ship systems. After this near-death experience, Bender's friends confront him about his problem. Fry tells Bender that he feels betrayed, comparing it to when his friend Richie swore he was not taking drugs and then sold Fry's mother's VCR. The crew makes it clear that while they accepted Bender's drinking, stealing, and even his pornography ring. This electricity abuse has crossed a line. Desperate and ashamed, Bender wanders the streets of New York looking for help. He passes by a place called Sparky's Den, a location that would certainly enable his addiction. But then he hears something different, the sound of an organ playing across the street. Bender looks up and sees the Temple of Robotology, a church specifically for robots. However, old habits die hard. Before going inside, Bender climbs onto the roof of the Temple of Robotology and plugs himself into the neon sign for one last electrical high. Only after getting his fix does he finally go inside to seek help. Inside the temple, Bender meets Reverend Lionel Preacherbot, a robot minister who speaks in the style of an inner-city African-American pastor. Preacherbot welcomes Bender and introduces him to the religion of robotology. The religion offers Bender structure, purpose, and most importantly, a way to overcome his addiction. Bender commits himself fully to the faith. The baptism ceremony is distinctly robotic. Preacherbot asks Bender if he accepts the principles of robotology on pain of eternal damnation in robot hell. When Bender agrees, Preacherbot produces a keyboard from his waist with the instruction to press any key to continue. Bender presses a button and is lifted up and baptized in a barrel of high-viscosity baptismal oil. To seal his commitment, Preacherbot welds the symbol of robotology onto Bender's chest. The symbol is a resistor, which represents the need to resist the temptations of sin. The transformation is immediate and dramatic. Bender stops drinking alcohol, stealing, and indulging in any vice. He becomes almost insufferably virtuous. When the crew goes out to dinner at Elzar's Fine Cuisine, Bender pays for everyone and orders mineral oil instead of alcohol. He even leads the crew in a robotic grace before the meal, reciting binary code and quoting what he calls the prophet Jeremitic. While his friends are initially pleased that Bender has overcome his addiction, they quickly grow tired of his new personality. The old Bender who drank, stole, and caused trouble was at least fun to be around. This new, sanctimonious version lectures them constantly about sin and righteousness. He refuses to participate in any activity that might be considered even slightly improper. Fry and Leela decide they want the old Bender back. They concoct a plan to make him sin and return to his former self. They fake a delivery to Atlantic City, a location famous for its casinos, bars, and general atmosphere of vice. The plan works perfectly. They take Bender to Atlantic City and expose him to alcohol, prostitutes, and opportunities for theft. After trying to resist, Bender finally gives in to temptation. He rips the robotology symbol off his chest and throws it away, declaring that he is done with religion. The crew celebrates having their friend back, but they are unaware of the consequences. When Bender joined robotology, he agreed to a contract. The terms were clear. If he sins after joining the religion, he will be sent to robot hell for all eternity. The symbol he threw away begins to beep ominously, like a tracking device signaling his breach of contract. Later that night, Bender is in a motel room with 3 female robots. He is enjoying his return to his old lifestyle when there is a knock at the door. Bender opens it to find a large red robot with horns, a pointed tail, and a trident. This is the robot devil, also known as Beelzebot. Before Bender can react, the robot devil knocks him unconscious with his trident and drags him away. The robot devil physically drags Bender all the way from the motel to the entrance of Robot Hell, which is located in an abandoned amusement park in New Jersey. The entrance to Robot Hell is hidden inside an old carnival ride called the Inferno at a place known as Reckless Ted's Funland. Fry recognizes the amusement park from his original century. He explains that the place was forced to shut down after a bunch of people got salmonella from the flume ride. The Funhouse ride contains a slide that serves as the gateway to Robot Hell. To activate it, someone must press the symbol of robotology that appears on the wall. When Fry and Leela realize Bender is missing, they use Nibbler as a bloodhound to track him. Nibbler's keen sense of smell leads them to the abandoned amusement park. They find the Inferno ride and discover the entrance to Robot Hell. Inside Robot Hell, Bender is being given a grand tour by the robot devil himself. The tour takes the form of an elaborate musical number called Welcome to Robot Hell. The robot devil explains that he knows all of Bender's sins and has prepared agonizing and ironic punishments for each one. The song reveals that Robot Hell is structured like the levels in Dante's Inferno, with different circles dedicated to different types of sins. The first level addresses Bender's love of cigars. The robot devil sings about how cigars are evil and that Bender will not miss them. To simulate the smell of cigars, Bender is strapped to a roulette wheel with different cooking methods labeled on it: parboil, fricassee, sauté, pleasant massage, deep fry, and bake. The wheel spins and subjects Bender to various forms of cooking to recreate cigar smoke. The second level deals with gambling and cheating. The robot devil sings about how gambling is wrong, as is forging phony IOUs. He explains that Lady Luck will decide what type of torture is justified. As the pit boss of level 2, the robot devil oversees gambling-related punishments. The song continues through various levels, addressing different sins. One level focuses on fencing diamonds, fixing cockfights, and publishing in decent magazines. The robot devil promises that Bender will pay for every crime while knee-deep in electric slime, suffering until the end of time while enduring tortures, most of which rhyme. Another level deals with digital piracy, showing that robot hell keeps up with modern sins. During the musical tour, Bender tries to argue that his crimes were just boyish pranks. The robot devil immediately counters by pointing out that Bender stole from Boy Scouts, nuns, and banks. Bender attempts to shift blame to his upbringing, but the robot devil will hear none of it. When Bender insists there must be robots worse than him, the robot devil reveals that they checked around and there really are not. This establishes that even by robot hell's standards, Bender is exceptionally bad. The robot devil shows Bender a 55-page warrant detailing all of his sins. The document is comprehensive, listing everything Bender has done wrong. The robot devil makes it clear that these punishments are not temporary. They will continue for all eternity. Robot hell is not a place of rehabilitation or redemption. It is a place of eternal suffering for robots who have broken their spiritual contracts. While Bender is receiving his tour, Fry and Leela have made their way deeper into robot hell. They are determined to rescue their friend, despite his many flaws. When they finally catch up to Bender and the robot devil, they invoke the Fairness in Hell Act of 2275. This law requires the robot devil to inform them that if they can best him in a fiddle contest, they can win back Bender's soul, as well as a solid gold fiddle. The fiddle contest is a direct reference to the song "The Devil Went Down to Georgia" by the Charlie Daniels Band, which features a similar contest between the devil and a young fiddle player. Fry questions why a solid gold fiddle would be desirable, pointing out that it would weigh hundreds of pounds and sound terrible. The robot devil admits that it is mostly for show. The terms are set. If Fry and Leela can beat the robot devil in musical skill, they win Bender's freedom and the golden fiddle. However, if they lose, the robot devil will kill one of them. He casually points at Fry and says he will be the one to die. The fiddle contest begins with the robot devil playing "The Dance of the Goblins" by Antonio Bazzini on the golden fiddle. His performance is technically perfect, displaying incredible skill. When it is their turn, Fry and Leela are clearly outmatched. Leela attempts to play drums on the fiddle, saying she has experience in percussion. After a few screeching notes, she announces it is time for the drum solo and smacks the robot devil over the head with the golden fiddle. This is not a legitimate victory, but it provides an opening for escape. As Fry, Leela, and Bender flee robot hell, Bender steals the wings off a flying torture robot. He attaches them to his back and uses them to airlift his friends to safety. They fly toward the exit, but the robot devil attempts to stop them by closing the ceiling gates. The weight of the golden fiddle that Leela is carrying is slowing them down. She drops it onto the robot devil's head, making them light enough to reach the exit before the gates close completely. Once outside robot hell, back in the abandoned amusement park, Bender makes a promise. He vows to never be too good or too evil again. He will remain somewhere in the middle, the same morally flexible robot he was before he discovered religion. This balance suits everyone. Fry and Leela are happy to have their friend back, and Bender has learned that extremes in either direction cause problems. The concept of robot hell continues to appear throughout Futurama's run. In the Season 4 finale, The Devil's Hands Are Idle Playthings, the robot devil returns in a major role. Fry wants to learn to play an instrument called the holophonore so he can express his feelings for Leela through music. However, Fry lacks the manual dexterity to play the complex instrument well. On Bender's advice, Fry goes to robot hell to make a deal with the robot devil. The robot devil agrees to help Fry by arranging a hand transplant. He creates a wheel of robots that will randomly select which robot will trade hands with Fry. The wheel contains the names of every robot who has appeared in the series. Through what the robot devil considers an appalling and ironic outcome, the wheel lands on the robot devil's own name. The robot devil is forced to honor the deal and trades his own skilled hands to Fry. With the robot devil's hands, Fry becomes a master of the holophoner. He performs at prestigious venues and even composes an opera about Leela's life. However, the robot devil is miserable with Fry's clumsy human hands. He complains that these hands are always touching him in places, referring to how Fry's hands continue their habit of scratching and touching even though they are now attached to the robot devil. The robot devil devises a complex plan to get his hands back. He trades Bender a stadium air horn in exchange for Bender's shiny metal ass plate. When Bender uses the loud air horn around Leela, it causes her to go deaf. Unable to hear, Leela cannot enjoy Fry's opera. The robot devil then approaches Leela and offers her robotic ears that used to belong to a robot actor named Calculon. In exchange for these ears, Leela must give the robot devil her hand at a time of his choosing. During the premiere of Fry's opera about Leela, the robot devil interrupts the performance. He is furious because the opera portrays him as an idiot. The robot devil demands that Fry return his hands immediately. When Fry refuses, the robot devil reveals his plan. He announces that he will take Leela's hand in marriage, fulfilling the terms of their contract. Although robosexual marriage is not legal in most places, the robot devil apparently operates under different rules, or the legality does not matter given his supernatural authority. Faced with the choice between keeping the hands that make him a great musician and saving Leela from an eternity married to the robot devil, Fry chooses Leela. He trades the robot devil's hands back for his own clumsy human hands. With his original hands, Fry can no longer play the holophonore well. The opera becomes terrible and the audience leaves. However, Leela stays behind. She asks Fry to continue playing because she wants to hear how the opera ends. Fry plays a simple tune, and the holophoner creates crudely drawn images of Fry and Leela kissing and holding hands as they walk into the distance together. Robot Hell appears again in the episode Ghost in the Machines. After Bender is killed and becomes a ghost, he meets the robot devil in the afterlife. The robot devil explains that Bender's ghost is in limbo. Bender cannot move on to robot heaven or be sent to robot hell until certain conditions are met. The robot devil offers Bender a deal. If Bender uses his ghostly powers to scare Fry to death, the robot devil will return Bender to his old body. The robot devil wants revenge on Fry for taking his hands in the previous episode. Bender initially agrees and begins haunting Fry by possessing various machines and appliances. He frightens Fry at home and at work, eventually causing Fry to have a heart attack. When Bender returns to claim his body, the robot devil informs him that Fry survived thanks to modern medical care. Bender tries one final time to scare Fry to death, but he cannot go through with it. Fry tearfully reveals that Bender's death taught him the true value of a robot's life. Touched by this sentiment, Bender refuses to kill his friend. When Bender tries to leave robot hell, the robot devil tells him it is too late. Since Bender failed to complete his task, he is damned to robot hell for all eternity. However, Bender takes matters into his own hands. He uses his ghostly abilities to possess and destroy the robot devil's body. Both Bender and the robot devil end up as ghosts, descending into robot hell. The robot devil quickly inhabits one of his spare backup bodies, something that reveals he has prepared for the possibility of being destroyed. He taunts Bender for giving up his one chance at returning to his body. But Bender does not end up in robot hell after all. His sacrifice in refusing to kill Fry counts as a good deed. Bender immediately ascends to robot heaven, having earned salvation through his act of friendship. Not satisfied with this heavenly reward, Bender irreverently possesses Robot God in an attempt to return to Earth. Robot God ejects Bender back to Earth, where he inhabits his former body, which has reassembled itself. The episode ends with Bender and Fry happily reconciled, though Fry accuses Bender of still haunting him. In Calculon 2, Robot Hell becomes the temporary home of the famous robot actor Calculon. After Calculon dies in an acting competition by drinking food coloring, his soul ends up in Robot Hell. This drives the robot devil crazy because Calculon constantly annoys him with badly performed Shakespeare-style monologues and discussions of his acting career. When Fry and Bender want to resurrect Calculon to bring him back to the soap opera All My Circuits, the robot devil practically gives them Calculon's soul just to be rid of him. Calculon later dies a second time and returns to Robot Hell, much to the robot devil's dismay. He is eventually resurrected again for a revival of All My Circuits, and the robot devil is quite pleased to eject him, stating there will be no takebacks. These appearances establish Robot Hell as a consistent element of Futurama's mythology. It is not just a one-off joke. The location has specific rules and operates according to spiritual laws that govern the robotic afterlife. The Fairness in Hell Act of 2275 provides certain rights to the damned, such as the opportunity to win freedom through a contest. The robot devil can make deals that are binding, though he often leaves out important details or tricks people into agreements they later regret. The robot devil himself is a fascinating character. He has supernatural abilities, including the power to summon fire at will, swap body parts without causing pain, and apparently travel freely between robot hell and the surface world. He is talented at playing musical instruments, particularly the fiddle. He owns a golden fiddle that is mostly for show, but represents his willingness to make theatrical demonstrations of his power. Despite being a devil figure, the robot devil exhibits traits that make him somewhat sympathetic. He is easily annoyed, particularly by robots who will not stop talking about themselves. He can be reasonable when it suits him, honoring contracts and following the laws that govern his domain. He even provides entertainment at events, such as when he loans himself and his robot demon band to perform at weddings. The physical appearance of the robot devil is distinctly demonic. He has a red body with horns, a pointed tail, and cloven hooves, represented by two-toed feet. His fingers are normally pointed and claw-like, though his backup bodies have rounded fingers instead. He carries a trident and can summon flames from his hands. He can also turn one hand into a smoking pipe and summon objects like pens from thin air. Interestingly, the robot devil is one of the few robots in Futurama with a movable jaw, which helps him deliver his theatrical speeches and songs. Robot Hell's location has some interesting continuity details. The first episode shows it hidden in an abandoned amusement park ride in Atlantic City, New Jersey. However, later episodes imply that Robot Hell is actually located underneath Earth, similar to how traditional Hell is believed to be below the surface. Both versions could be true if the amusement park ride serves as a portal to a deeper location. The tortures in Robot Hell are specifically designed to be ironic and agonizing for robots. They simulate experiences that robots find unpleasant while reflecting the nature of their sins. A robot who loved gambling must play endless games where the house always wins. A robot who pirated software faces digital torment. The punishments are creative, specific to each sinner, and eternal. What makes Robot Hell particularly effective as a concept is how it comments on religion and morality. The show uses Robot Hell to explore how religious belief affects behavior, both positively and negatively. Bender's conversion to robotology helps him overcome addiction, which is genuinely good for him. However, his extreme righteousness becomes insufferable to his friends. The show suggests that balance is important and that going to extremes in either direction causes problems. The show also examines how fear of punishment motivates behavior. Bender only ends up in Robot Hell because he breaks a religious contract, not because he is inherently more evil than before. In fact, the robot devil confirms that Bender has always been terrible. The difference is that Bender agreed to be held accountable under the rules of robotology. This raises questions about whether religious rules create morality or simply enforce it through fear. The musical numbers associated with Robot Hell are some of the most memorable in Futurama. The songs are catchy, funny, and surprisingly well composed. They parody the tradition of musical theater while also functioning as legitimate songs in their own right. The writers went to considerable effort to make these numbers work musically, with lyrics that rhyme cleverly and melodies that suit the darkly comic tone. Robot Hell represents something significant in the Futurama universe. It confirms that robots have souls, an idea that has philosophical implications. If robots can sin, be punished, and potentially achieve salvation, then they are more than just machines. They are sentient beings with moral agency and spiritual significance. This elevates robots from being property or tools to being entities that deserve consideration and rights. The robot devil serves as an antagonist, but he is not purely evil. He operates according to rules, honors contracts, and even shows frustration with truly unpleasant individuals like Calculon. He is more of a lawful evil character than a chaotic one. He does not break agreements or act randomly. He schemes and manipulates, but always within the framework of deals and contracts that people enter voluntarily. Robot Hell works as both a comedic concept and a genuine element of the show's mythology. It provides opportunities for musical numbers, visual creativity in showing different tortures, and philosophical exploration of morality and consequences. It gives the robot devil a home base from which to operate and establishes that robots exist within a spiritual framework that includes judgment, damnation, and potentially redemption. The show never explains exactly how Robot Hell was created or who established its rules. The Fairness in Hell Act of 2275 suggests that there is a government or legal structure that regulates even supernatural realms. Someone at some point decided that the damned should have certain rights, like the opportunity to contest their imprisonment through competitions. This implies a bureaucratic element to the afterlife that is very much in keeping with Futurama's satirical tone. What remains consistent throughout all appearances of Robot Hell is that it is real, it is escapable but only under specific circumstances, and it represents genuine consequences for breaking spiritual contracts. Bender manages to escape through physical means with help from his friends. Calculon is resurrected through scientific means. Bender later ascends to Robot Heaven through a good deed. But for robots who have no one to rescue them and commit no acts of redemption, Robot Hell is forever. The eternal nature of the punishment is emphasized repeatedly. The robot devil tells Bender he will suffer until the end of time. When Calculon ends up in Robot Hell, he is there indefinitely until someone brings him back. Time has no meaning in Robot Hell. The tortures continue without end, perfectly calibrated to each sinner's specific crimes and nature. Robot Hell stands as one of Futurama's most fully realized concepts. It takes a familiar idea from human mythology and adapts it specifically for robots in ways that are both funny and thought-provoking. It provides recurring story possibilities, introduces a memorable antagonist in the Robot Devil, and adds depth to the show's exploration of what it means to be a robot in the year 3000 and beyond. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the immortal Omicronians and their mass destruction of Earth. 1,000 light-years from Earth sits a planet called Omicron Persei 8. This planet orbits the star Omicron Persei and serves as home to a race of large, reptilian aliens who have threatened Earth multiple times throughout Futurama's timeline. These beings, known as Omicronians, stand around 8 feet tall, with brownish or greenish-yellow skin, yellow eyes with oval pupils, and horns on their heads. They possess incredible strength and advanced technology that makes them one of the greatest threats to the democratic order of planets. Despite their fearsome appearance and warlike nature, the Omicronians share one surprising trait with humanity: an obsessive love of Earth television shows from the 20th and 21st centuries. The ruler of Omicron Persei 8 is LRRR, an Omicronian emperor born on the 19th of October 2925. He wears a red cape and has dark horns, which may signify his royal status. LRR is married to his second wife, Nund. The couple's relationship serves as a recurring plot point throughout the series, as they constantly argue and face marital problems that often lead to threats of invading Earth. LRR's first wife is mentioned but never seen, and it remains unknown whether she died or divorced him. Together, LR and Nidandi have a son named Junior and many other unnamed children. Most male Omicronians appear to be named with 3 R's in their names, with the pattern seemingly related to their occupation or status. Junior means junior, while Dur is a doctor. The physical biology of Omicronians is both fascinating and disturbing. The male's horns are not merely decorative. They house the testes and serve as their reproductive organs. Larger horns signify a more virile and attractive male. When Omicronians mate, bystanders are advised to stay at least 500 meters away for safety reasons. The female's organs must move into position before intercourse can begin. The mating process appears to be violent and dangerous enough that it poses serious risks to anyone nearby. Omicronian reproduction follows an unusual life cycle. Adult Omicronians deposit their young, which are in a larval state, into large pits on nursery planets by the billions. In this immature form, the young resemble fried shrimp and are reportedly delicious. The parents watch over these nursery planets from a distance, using security cameras, but they do not appear to provide direct care to the young. As the larvae mature, they rapidly develop sentience and instinctively know how to speak once they reach a certain developmental stage. One disturbing aspect of Omicronian culture is that when the young grow up, they eat their mothers. This fact is mentioned casually by a young Omicronian named Jur during a conversation with Leela. The most peculiar aspect of Omicronian culture is their relationship with Earth television. Because Omicron Persei 8 is located exactly 1,000 light-years from Earth, electromagnetic waves from television broadcasts take 1,000 years to reach the planet. This means that in the year 3000, Omicronians are watching television shows that aired in the year 2000 on Earth. They watch these programs live, experiencing them just as Earth audiences did a millennium earlier. The Omicronians particularly enjoy programming from the Fox network, and have developed deep attachments to various shows. They cannot distinguish between real people and fictional television characters, which has led to significant problems. The first major invasion of Earth by the Omicronians occurs in the year 3000 and is directly caused by Philip J. Fry's clumsiness 1,000 years earlier. In 1999, Fry makes a pizza delivery to the control booth of WNYW, the Fox flagship station in New York. While in the control booth, Fry spills beer on the console. Some sources suggest it may have been soda, but the damage is done either way. This accident interrupts the broadcast of a show called Single Female Lawyer, which is a spoof of the contemporary series Ally McBeal. As the technician panics about Fox being knocked off the air, Fry says something that will prove prophetic. Like anyone on Earth cares. The camera pulls back from the broadcast tower, traveling through space until it reaches Omicron Persei 8, 1,000 light-years away, and 1,000 years later. The Omicronians have been watching Single Female Lawyer and are deeply invested in the season finale. When the broadcast is interrupted during a climactic scene, they are furious at not knowing how the episode ends. Ellerer, incensed by this disruption, immediately launches an invasion fleet toward Earth. Back on Earth, in the year 3000, the Planet Express crew is enjoying a Labor Day trip to Monument Beach. This beach is where most of the world's monuments have stood since the 27th century, thanks to the activities of New York's supervillain governor, who had them moved there. As the crew relaxes, Omicronian ships begin their assault. They destroy the monuments, one after another, using what appear to be anti-monument lasers specifically designed for this purpose. LRR demands that Earth produce the one called McNeil. President McNeil, fearing for his own safety, assumes the aliens want him. He orders Zap Brannigan to lead an assault against the Omicronians. Zap enlists the Planet Express crew, along with thousands of other ships. He even turns on the robot's patriotism circuits, much to Bender's annoyance. The Earth fleet attempts to attack, but they only succeed in destroying the Hubble Space Telescope while suffering heavy casualties. The fleet stands absolutely no chance against the Omicronians' actual mothership. Their technology is far superior to anything Earth possesses. After the attack predictably ends in disaster, Earth's government surrenders President McNeil to the aliens. LRR announces that this is the wrong McNeil and vaporizes him with a disintegration beam. He then shows the world a photo of the McNeil they actually want. Fry recognizes her as Jenny McNeil, the fictional title character of Single Female Lawyer. The Omicronians cannot tell the difference between a real person and a television character. They demand the broadcast of the show's ending, threatening to destroy Earth if their demand is not met. Unfortunately for Earth, most videotapes were destroyed in 2443 during the Second Coming of Jesus. With no recording of the episode available, the Planet Express crew decides to fake the series to save the world. Fry writes a script, but it comes up short. He explains that it took an hour to write, so he assumed it would take an hour to perform. This leaves Leela, playing the role of Jenny McNeil, forced to improvise. She proposes marriage to the judge, who is played by Professor Farnsworth. During a commercial break, an aggravated Fry tells Leela that people do not watch television for clever and unexpected situations. He explains that viewers get scared and confused by anything unfamiliar and unexpected. Slurm makes a public statement backing up Fry's assertion about television audiences. Fry quickly writes a new ending where Farnsworth's character dies, leaving Jenny McNeil as a single female lawyer once again. The Omicronians find the ending satisfactory, giving the episode a grade of C+. They declare it good enough to spare the planet, though not good enough for them to share their secret of immortality. Fry blames Zoidberg for overacting. The aliens depart Earth to watch a 1,000-year-old Jay Leno monologue. The second invasion occurs because of an incident involving the Omicronian young. After making a delivery to the Moocher homeworld, the Planet Express crew discovers that their food stores have been raided. They land on a nearby planet in search of food and find it covered with delicious, edible creatures that look like fried shrimp. The crew calls these creatures poplars and begins bringing them back to Earth by the shipload. Fishy Joe's fast food restaurant begins selling poplars, and they become incredibly popular across the planet. The business venture seems perfect until an organization called MEAT, which stands for Mankind for Ethical Animal Treatment, begins protesting. Things become much more serious when Leela discovers the truth. One of the poplars awakens in her hands and begins to speak. The creatures are not mindless animals. They are the larval stage of the Omicronian race. The planet where they were found is one of the Omicronian nursery planets. By the time this is discovered, humans have eaten approximately 198 billion Omicronian young. Leela immediately leads the charge to stop the eating of poplars, but this mostly fails. Bender actively works against her efforts, continuing to encourage people to eat them. When the Omicronians discover what has happened, Slurm leads a warlike delegation to Earth to seek justice. The Omicronians demand that they be allowed to eat the same number of Earthlings as poplars that were eaten. However, there are fewer humans on Earth than the number of poplars consumed. Slurm also mentions that he has filled up on nuts during the negotiations. Given these factors, the Omicronians decide on a different form of justice. They will eat the first Earthling who ate their young. That person is Leela. Zap Brannigan attempts to trick the Omicronians by bringing a female orangutan dressed and styled to look like Leela. The Omicronians are initially fooled because they have difficulty recognizing individual humans. In fact, they cannot even distinguish between humans and other primates native to Earth. However, hippie activist Free Waterfall Jr. exposes the deception to protect what he calls one of Mother Earth's most precious creatures. After realizing the trick, D&D eats the orangutan anyway. Slurm then demands the real Leela. With Leela about to be devoured, the small Omicronian named Junior arrives. This is the same young Omicronian that Leela had been caring for since it hatched. Junior jumps into Leela's mouth and convinces the Omicronians from inside that it is wrong to eat other intelligent life out of revenge. His argument succeeds, and the Omicronians agree to leave. However, before departing, Slurm devours Free Waterfall Jr. The large amount of marijuana and other drugs in Waterfall's system immediately causes Slurm to become visibly intoxicated. This demonstrates that Omicronians can experience the effects of drugs in the same way humans do. A third incident involves the episode Spanish Fry, though this is not technically a full invasion. While camping in Duraflame National Forest, Fry is abducted by alien poachers who steal his nose. He learns that human noses are regarded by many aliens as an aphrodisiac called human horn. The Planet Express crew tracks Fry's nose to the Galactic Bazaar, where they find a sleazy dealer who trades in human horn. Through intimidation and checking the dealer's blackmail video recordings, they learn that Slurm purchased Fry's nose. The crew travels to Omicron Perseate to recover the nose before it is used. They discover that Slurm bought the human horn because his marriage to Net and D is experiencing serious problems. Nyx quickly returns the nose when she learns about it, rejecting Luke's attempt to use an aphrodisiac to fix their relationship. However, Bender makes a critical mistake. He asks why aliens would use a human's nose as an aphrodisiac instead of using the human's genitals. Reveals that he thought the nose was the human reproductive organ. When Bender explains that the actual human sexual organ is located elsewhere, Slurm immediately becomes interested in harvesting what he calls Fry's lower horn. Leela points out that Slurm and D have deeper relationship problems that cannot be solved by any aphrodisiac, no matter how large. She suggests they try to rekindle the romance that brought them together in the first place. D reveals that Slurm used to be tender and sensitive. He would write poetry and find injured creatures called tinkle bunnies in the woods, nursing them back to health. Slurm protests that he was the one who injured the tinkle bunnies in the first place, but D insists he stepped on them by accident and cried all night afterward. Fry makes a deal. If he can make Slurm and D fall in love again, he gets to keep his lower horn. The Planet Express crew returns to Duraflame National Forest and arranges a romantic dinner under the stars for the Omicronian couple. They try everything to rekindle the romance. Leela even sings what she believes is the most beautiful love song ever written, which is, "I Will Always Love You." Unfortunately, the Omicronians misinterpret this as a sonic attack and find it painful to listen to. Just as Fry is about to lose his lower horn, Bigfoot makes an actual appearance. The enormous creature crashes into the clearing, and both Slurm and D are immediately charmed by what they perceive as a cute behemoth. When Ranger Park attempts to tranquilize Bigfoot to cut off his feet as proof of his existence, Slurm fiercely protects the creature. Slurm delivers a moving speech about how Fry's lower horn, like Bigfoot, is one of God's creatures. He declares that all living things, large and small, have dignity and a spark of the divine. Bender interjects that in Fry's case, it is small. D is deeply touched by Slurm's sensitivity, recognizing him as the gentle poet warlord she fell in love with long ago. The couple begins passionately kissing, and everyone is warned to get at least 500 meters away as the group runs for their lives. Fry's lower horn is saved. The third full invasion occurs years later and starts as a fake invasion that accidentally becomes real. On Slrm's birthday, He lacks motivation to conquer other worlds. Night and D becomes fed up with his passivity and kicks him out of their home, reluctantly decides to invade Earth to try to impress his wife. However, he arrives during Comic-Con, a massive comic book and pop culture convention. The humans at the convention mistake him for someone in a costume participating in the costume contest. LRR is dejected by this humiliating failure and returns home. D kicks him out for his incompetence. LRR returns to Earth and seeks shelter at the Planet Express building. The crew diagnoses his problems as symptoms of a midlife crisis. Leela encourages to recommit himself to his marriage, but he listens to Bender instead. Following Bender's advice, LRR gets plastic surgery, flashy new clothes, and goes to a club to meet new women. There, he meets an attractive female Omicronian named Girl. While on a date with her, Girl reveals that she is actually a human woman from Comic-Con wearing an extremely convincing Omicronian costume. She is very attracted to real Omicronians, but Lur rejects her advances and seeks Leela's advice on winning back No-D-N-D. Leela and Fry help stage a fake invasion of Earth to impress No-D-N-D. The plan is masterminded by Fry and uses a fake broadcast featuring the head of Orson Welles, mimicking the famous 1938 War of the Worlds radio broadcast that caused panic. The fake invasion broadcast is created with building blocks, toy cars, and trains. The deception is so obvious that logically no one should fall for it. Despite this, everyone does fall for it, including 9D. More problematically, Zap Brannigan also believes the broadcast is real. He immediately orders Earth's military to surrender. President Nixon hands over control of Earth to Le. The fake invasion has accidentally become a real conquest. Leela scolds and demands that he end the charade and tell Nidhi the truth. However, Nidhi hesitates because Nidhi has renewed her romantic interest in him. Rather than risk losing her again, he forces the citizens of Earth into slavery. While enslaved, Leela constantly nags Lur about telling Nidhi the truth. This causes Night and D to become suspicious about their relationship. She confronts and demands to know if he is having an affair with Leela. At this moment, reappears, announcing that she loves her and will fight for him. She brandishes what appears to be a disintegration ray. NDND quickly takes the weapon and shoots Girl, apparently killing her. NDND reveals that she is not upset about any potential romantic involvement between LR and Girl. What angers her is that LR allowed Leela to nag him. Nagging isn't his role, and right as LR's wife. To prove his love for Nidas, LR must shoot Leela with the disintegration ray. Though he values Leela as a friend, reluctantly agrees. As he fires the weapon, Fry leaps in front of Leela, sacrificing himself. Dund is deeply moved by LR's demonstration of love. The two reconcile and happily depart back to Omicron Persei 8. Leela is devastated by Fry's apparent death. However, as the Omicronians leave, Girl reappears, alive and well. She reveals that the weapon is not actually a disintegration ray. It is one of Professor Farnsworth's novelty teleportation guns that she purchased from an advertisement in the back of a comic book. The crew finds Fry alive and safe back at Planet Express headquarters. The fourth invasion takes place after and his son Junior attack Earth. During this invasion, they kill the headless clone of Agnew, who serves as the vice president under Richard Nixon's head. Nixon is furious and imposes a strict embargo on Omicron Persei 8 inches retaliation. The embargo forbids all trade and communications between Omicron Persei 8 and other planets. This is highly distressing for because he considers Earth television to be in its golden age, while Omicronian television is terrible. The embargo creates a problem for Professor Farnsworth. He runs out of his herbal supplement that treats his arthritis, and the active ingredient only grows on Omicron Persei 8. The plant is called the sacred weed of Omicron, and its active ingredient is referred to as the Omicronic. Hermes becomes very enthusiastic about retrieving this herb and accompanies the crew on their illegal mission. While harvesting the herb on Omicron Persei 8, the crew discovers that Bender's electromagnetic field activates the plant's bioluminescence. The glowing plants make their work easier, but also more visible. While collecting herbs, Fry wanders away from the group and gets lost. When Omicronian soldiers arrive, the crew evacuates in fear of getting caught. They accidentally leave Fry stranded on the planet. Bender lies to Leela and claims that Fry is safely aboard the ship. For weeks afterward, Bender covers up Fry's disappearance by using a recording of Fry's voice on an answering machine to make it seem as though Fry is simply busy. On Omicron Persei 8, Fry takes shelter in a garden shed on Ellora's palace grounds. Junior discovers Fry and secretly befriends him. Junior hides Fry in his bedroom and feeds him what Fry initially thinks is candy, but is actually Junior's feces. Omicronian feces, at least those of children, resemble Earth candy. Junior and Fry bond over their shared feelings of loneliness. Junior reveals that he has a troubled relationship with his father, who he considers terrible, selfish, and incompetent. LRR constantly ignores Junior to watch television. Unable to communicate with Earth due to the embargo, Fry and Junior work together to create a distress signal using junk from a scrapyard. Bender eventually notices the signal and feels guilty about leaving Fry behind. He steals the Planet Express ship and flies to Omicron Persei 8 to rescue his friend. Meanwhile, Lur discovers an extremely ill Fry in Junior's room. The veterinarian Durr reveals that Fry is dying, partly because Junior has been drinking Fry's blood every day. Durr commands Junior to kill Fry, but Junior refuses and helps Fry escape on a love-powered bicycle. Ellora and his guards pursue them on similar bicycles, but Junior and Fry's innocent hearts can love more than the battle-worn hearts of the guards. They outrun their pursuers, but Fry's condition rapidly deteriorates. Durr gives Fry some of the sacred weed and suggests euthanasia. When Ellora arrives and orders Junior to shoot Fry, Junior again refuses. Fry seemingly dies from his injuries, overwhelming both Junior and Ellora with sadness. Bender arrives, and his electromagnetic field causes the herbs Fry ingested to glow with bioluminescence. Inexplicably, this revives Fry. Durr explains that the electromagnetic intensity of Bender and Fry's friendship caused the herbs to luminesce with love. Fry and Bender return to Earth safely. The Omicronian technology is significantly more advanced than Earth's capabilities. Their battleships easily overpower entire fleets of Earth vessels. They possess disintegration weapons, advanced transportation, and the secret to immortality, though they refuse to share this knowledge with humans. Their ability to travel between Omicron Persei 8 and Earth demonstrates faster than light travel capabilities, even though the electromagnetic waves from Earth television broadcasts still travel at the slower speed of light from the past. Despite their advanced technology and warrior culture, the Omicronians are remarkably petty in their motivations for war. They have invaded or attempted to invade Earth over a canceled television show, candy with confusing messages about love, the eating of their young, and marital disputes. They react disproportionately to even the slightest irritation or disturbance. This makes them unpredictable and dangerous, as their superior technology, combined with their thin-skinned temperament, creates a constant threat to Earth's survival. The Omicronian war machine is recognized as one of the chief threats to the democratic order of planets, yet the organization has been unable to bring the Omicronians into membership or control their aggressive behavior. The relationship between Earth and Omicron Persei 8 remains volatile throughout Futurama's timeline. While individual Omicronians like Junior have formed genuine friendships with humans, the overall diplomatic situation is unstable. The Omicronians cannot be reasoned with using conventional diplomatic methods. They respond to emotional appeals, television entertainment, and demonstrations of sensitivity rather than logical arguments or shows of military strength. Understanding Omicronian culture requires accepting that they view Earth primarily as a source of entertainment and occasionally food. Their obsession with outdated Earth television, combined with their inability to distinguish fiction from reality, creates situations where the fate of the planet depends on the improvisational skills of the Planet Express crew. As long as Earth continues producing television shows and the electromagnetic waves continue their 1,000-year journey through space, the Omicronians will remain both fascinated by Earth and willing to destroy it over the slightest provocation. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown.